Chapter 10:15. Those strong men answered, and were about to dive into the ground to capture them. Unfortunately, before they could move, Ning Fan's group had already reached the surface while the stone dragon was still lurking in the ground. The strong men immediately became alert. Without a doubt, Ning Fan's group was the madman who crashed into the formation at the border of the middle state. Each of the strong men moved with a swooshing sound. In just an instant, they occupied all the positions and surrounded the three of them. Their movements were in sync with each other's. Ning Fan felt a little helpless. He did not expect to get himself into some trouble, even before he entered the middle state. Speaking of which, did that stone dragon purposely crash into the grand formation at the border? Didn't it know how to avoid it? Most of the strong men in front of him were only at the life immortal realm. Duolon frowned slightly and released a trace of shedding void chi. The strong men immediately became alert. Experts who were shedding void chi were not considered weak in any grassland. Obviously, this group of people had a powerful background. But so what? They were just a group of foreigners after all. How could they be compared to the cultivators of the middle state, who had a noble status? The strong men revealed arrogant expressions. That was the superiority of the people of the middle state. When they faced the other cultivators of the grassland, they often showed regional discrimination. Ning Fan was slightly speechless. Cultivators from other regions would be discriminated against by the people of the middle state. The cultivators of the Holy Mountain would also discriminate against ordinary people of the middle state. This was probably a characteristic of the middle state. Which grassland are the three of you cultivators from? How dare you to crash into the formation at the border? Don't you know that this is against the commandment of the middle state? If you surrender obediently and accept your punishment, we can still give you a lighter punishment. If you dare to resist, don't blame us for torturing you. The strong men's expressions were fierce and threatening. We are cultivators of the southern border. We are here to participate in the grand competition of the middle state. It is indeed our fault for crashing into the grand formation at the border. According to the commandment of the middle state, a small crime can be atoned with gold and silver. We are willing to offer gold and silver to make up for our crime. Xin Yuchun skillfully took out a storage pouch filled with gold and silver. It was not his first time coming to the middle state. He naturally knew what these people wanted. The expressions of the strong men immediately softened. When they saw that the storage pouch contained more than 1,000,000 taels of gold and silver. When they looked at Xin Yuchun's eyes, there was a smile that said, "You are very sensible." Ning Fan was slightly speechless. He could not believe that they could solve the dispute in front of him with useless things like gold and silver. Despicable people love gold and silver. Just this bit of atonement silver? It's only enough to pardon one person. If you want to pardon 3 people, it's not enough. The bearded commander behind the strong men said coldly. Xin Yuchun silently cursed the other party for being greedy. He then took out a storage bag filled with gold and silver, and handed it to the bearded commander. Another 1,000,000 taels of gold and silver. Greed flashed in the bearded commander's eyes, but he still kept a straight face and deliberately said in a cold voice, "Still not enough." Xin Yuchun gritted his teeth and handed over another 1,000,000 taels of silver. The bearded commander finally revealed a satisfied smile and patted Xin Yuchun's shoulder. "I didn't expect younger brother to come from the southern border to actually have such a high net worth, hee. The matter of colliding with the array formation at the border is cleared. You can enter the central plains now." "Oh right, younger brother, do you need a spirit beast carriage? I have a batch of high-grade spirit beast carriages here. They were left behind by some cultivators who broke the law in front of us to atone for their crimes. How about I sell one to you cheaply?" He had already regarded Xin Yuchun, who squandered money like dirt, as the leader of the 3. "Thank you for your kind offer, but we plan to buy a spirit beast carriage after we pass the border." Xin Yuchun had an expression that said, "I have been cheated many times, don't lie to me. That's really a pity. I can't earn another sum of money from this foolish brat." The bearded commander waved his hand. After ordering the strong men to let them pass, Ning Fan's group finally entered the central plains smoothly. Along the way, Xin Yuchun's face was full of dejection. He had just entered the central plains, and he had already lost 3,000,000 taels of gold and silver. He felt a great pain in his heart. Ningfan naturally would not feel heartache. To him, gold and silver were just stones on the roadside. If he could use gold and silver to solve a problem, then it was not a problem. He could not understand why the despicable people valued gold and silver so much. Duolan, on the other hand, felt a little bitter. These soldiers at the border, they actually did not recognize her identity. She was the guardian of the holy mountain, the saintess of Chu Lai's lineage. If these soldiers at the border knew her identity, they would not dare to question her even if she did not hand over the gold and silver. That's right. She had left the center of power of Chu Lai's lineage for too long. It had been so long that the cultivators of the holy mountain did not put her in their eyes. It had been so long that these soldiers at the border actually did not recognize the saintess. Not far from the border, there was a small city at the border. The three of them arrived at the city on foot. It was not that they did not want to fly, but the restrictive force of the middle state was too strong. Those who were not ancient cultivators would not be able to fly. Other than that, the underground of the middle state was filled with formations, making it extremely difficult to enter the middle state through the earth. Thus, Ningfan could only leave the stone dragon outside the middle state. The small city in front of them was not more than 10 li in size. There were quite a number of cultivators going in and out of the city. Most of the travelers would buy spirit beast carriages here as a form of transportation. I've seen so many nomadic lives of the people of the Southern Territory. It's really a little unexpected to see a city on the grassland. Ningfan said with surprise. The grassland of the Middle State is a special case in the Dabi grassland. In terms of the vastness of the territory, the Middle State is ranked first. The people here no longer live in tribes or live as nomads. Instead, they build cities and live in them. The cities are connected by official roads. Within the Middle State, there are tens of thousands of small cities and hundreds of middle cities. There is only one big city called Lioli City. It is the Buddhist capital of the Middle State. It is the holy land in the eyes of countless Buddhist sects and saints. It is also the place where the grand competitions of the Middle State are held. Duolan explained respectfully. Of course, she did it through telepathy. She did not want Xinyu Chun to hear her tone of speaking in such a respectful manner. Lioli City, huh? I wonder if Nuan Air is waiting for me in Lioli City or somewhere else. Ningfan felt a little helpless. The entire Middle State was filled with an extremely strong restrictive force of the Middle State. Those below the level of immortal venerables could not fly in the sky. Therefore, there were not many scenes of people flying across the sky in the Middle State. Most of the time, they would travel in spirit beast carriages. In the Middle State, there was also a restrictive force that limited the range of the spirit sense of cultivators. Ningfan tried to activate his rain technique. However, he realized that his rain technique, which had always been successful, could not cover too far. It could only cover a distance of 10,000 li at most. Of course, the reason why it was so severely restricted was because his cultivation base was limited. However, according to Ningfan's estimation, even if his cultivation base was not restricted, he would not be able to cover the entire Middle State with his spirit sense. Unfortunately, Zhang Yu and Ningfan had agreed to meet in the Middle State, but they did not leave the address. As a result, Ningfan actually had no idea where he should go to find Zhang Yu and Ouyang Wan. Fortunately, there was a faint connection between the child relic and the mother relic. Ningfan looked towards the north. He could vaguely sense that Ouyang Wan and Zhang Yu were in that general direction. Is Lioli City in the north of the Middle State? Ningfan asked through telepathy. No. Lioli City is located in the extreme west of the Middle State. Why do you ask this question, senior? Duolan replied through telepathy. I need to go to the north of the Middle State to settle some matters. In other words, aren't we going to Lioli City directly? Xinyu Chun noticed the conversation between Ningfan and Duolan through telepathy. He automatically imagined that the two of them were exchanging glances with each other. His limited intelligence told him that Ningfan and Duolan were probably talking to each other through telepathy. They were probably saying some extremely mushy words of love that they did not want him to hear. Zai, I'm really muddle-headed. It's so troublesome for me to stand here. I'm completely affecting the progress of the relationship between master and mistress. I've arrived at the Middle State. I have an appointment with that old man, and it's not on the same route as you. Can I leave first? Xin Yu-chun winked at Ning Fan with an expression that said, Master, I can only help you to this point. Since it's not on the same route, you can go by yourself. Ning Fan nodded and let Xin Yu-chun leave. Xin Yu-chun eagerly entered the city and bought a spiritual beast carriage before leaving. Ning Fan and Duo Lan were alone again. There was no need for them to talk through telepathy. Senior's disciple seems to have misunderstood something. Duo Lan noticed Xin Yu-chun winking at her. With her intelligence, she vaguely guessed that Xin Yu-chun must have misunderstood something. How could she have that kind of relationship with Senior Ning? She's just a soul-locking slave. Xin Yu-chun isn't my disciple. You don't have to care about him. He's just letting his imagination run wild. Let's get down to business. I'm going to the north of the Middle State. I don't know where exactly I'm going. However, if I get close to this place, I should be able to confirm it. After I buy a spiritual beast carriage, I'll head north first. Ning Fan said indifferently. Once again, they talked about the itinerary. You don't know the destination, but you want to go to the north of the Middle State. Duo Lan felt strange. However, she had learned her lesson, and did not ask too many questions. He only responded with a respectful yes. There were quite a number of shops that sold spiritual beast carriages in the city. However, most of them were low-grade spiritual beast carriages. The spiritual beasts that pulled the carriages were only at the life immortal realm, or crossing true realm. Naturally, their speed would not be too fast. After searching for a long time, Ning Fan could only find a shop that sold spiritual beast carriages above the void-shedding realm. The name of the shop was Thunder Sound Pavilion. There was a blurred formation outside the pavilion. If one's cultivation level was not high enough, they would not even be able to get close to the pavilion. They could only be stopped outside. Ning Fan, of course, was not afraid of this formation. He calmly brought Duo Lan inside. Every step he took was strangely on the veins of the formation. After taking 3 steps, there was a thunderous sound coming from the formation. However, when Ning Fan casually pointed at it, the thunderous sound disappeared. After taking 7 steps, the thunderous sound resounded again. It actually carried a vast and mighty aura. However, it was still extinguished by Ning Fan with a single step. After taking 9 steps, the thunderous sound was about to resound again. However, Ning Fan had already brought Duo Lan through the layers of formations and entered the Thunder Sound Pavilion. It was just a mere 9 steps. In the end, the thunderous sound in the formation did not condense. It was still suppressed by him. This is a little terrifying. Duo Lan was secretly shocked. Isn't Senior's attainment in formations too high? This is the Thunder Sound's secret restriction of the Thunder Sound Pavilion. Even though this pavilion was just one of the branches of the Thunder Sound lineage, and there was only a corner of the formation outside the pavilion, it was still extremely difficult for an ancient immortal venerable to completely suppress the thunderous sound from entering the formation. However, Ning Fan was able to do it easily. In Duo Lan's heart, she could not help but feel a little more respectful towards Ning Fan. When Ning Fan and Duo Lan entered the pavilion, the group of maids who were not prepared at all were shocked. As for the shopkeeper who was taking a nap in the pavilion, he also opened his eyes at this moment. His eyes were filled with astonishment. This was an early thought fragmentation realm expert. However, he was taking up the position of the shopkeeper of the Thunder Sound Pavilion. Ning Fan's eyes narrowed slightly. If this person is not an old monster who lives in the streets, it means that the foundation of this Thunder Sound Pavilion is too strong. It is enough to make the thought fragmentation realm the shopkeeper. Your attainment in formations is really high. You can actually ignore the formation and enter the Thunder Sound Pavilion. Forgive me for my poor eyesight, but I don't seem to have seen you in the Sacred Mountain before. Could it be that you are a cultivator from the Debay tribe? The shopkeeper cupped his fists politely and asked. Inwardly, he was secretly guessing Ning Fan's identity. With such a terrifying technique, he could directly suppress the Thunder Sound's secret restriction and enter the pavilion. It is impossible for him to be a nobody. Why does he look so unfamiliar? Suddenly, his gaze fell upon Duo Lan, and he was surprised again. Isn't this the Saintess Chu Lai? The declining saintess of a declining lineage. The shopkeeper withdrew his gaze. The disdain in his eyes was still caught by Duolan. Duolan felt a little bitter, but she still sent a telepathic message to Ningfan. The Thunder Sound lineage is the #1 branch in the sacred mountain. There are 4 immortal emperors in the clan. Their strength far surpasses my Chu Lai's lineage. This Thunder Sound Pavilion is one of the businesses of the Thunder Sound lineage. When we come here to buy a spiritual beast carriage, we must be polite. We must not offend the Thunder Sound Pavilion. Ningfan's eyes turned slightly solemn. The Thunder Sound lineage is the #1 branch in the sacred mountain. With 4 immortal emperors in the clan. No wonder this Thunder Sound Pavilion can make a thought fragmentation realm cultivator the shopkeeper. It seems that the spiritual beast carriages they are selling are not for those low-grade cultivators. I'm not a cultivator from the Debay tribe. I'm a cultivator from the outside world. This time, I'm representing the Towerwood clan of the southern border to participate in the competition in the middle state. Ningfan answered honestly. He did not feel that his identity as an external cultivator was inferior to others. The shopkeeper immediately frowned. His attitude towards Ningfan was no longer as polite as it was in the beginning. So what if you can suppress the thunder sound in the secret restriction? You are just an external cultivator. You are even worse than the declining Chu Lai. Are you here to buy a spiritual beast carriage? Our Thunder Sound Pavilion is different from the shops in the outside world. We don't accept gold or silver. We only accept items of equivalent value. Do you know this rule? The shopkeeper asked impatiently. This is the first time I heard that the Great Humble Tribe has a shop that allows people to barter. Ningfan's temperament was not to be angered by the shopkeeper's attitude. If an external cultivator is here to buy a spiritual beast carriage, the requirements are even harsher. The items used to exchange for a spiritual beast carriage must be pills of equivalent value. We don't want anything else. Although my tribe looks down on you external cultivators, we still value your pills very much. Here. This is the price list. Take a look yourself. If you like a spiritual beast carriage, use pills of equivalent value to exchange for it. Also, there are some pills that our pavilion doesn't accept. The types of pills that we don't accept are recorded in this scroll. Take a look yourself. The shopkeeper casually threw 2 scrolls to Ningfan. Then he ignored Ningfan and continued to pretend to sleep. The first scroll. It recorded the detailed information of all the spiritual beast carriages in the Thunder Sound Pavilion. At the same time, it marked the price. The spiritual beast carriage drawn on the scroll was not static. It was moving. The wheels would roll forward from time to time. The spirit beast that pulled the carriage would occasionally roar towards the sky. The sound could be vaguely heard from the scroll. Ningfan roughly scanned the prices of these spiritual beast carriages. According to the materials used for the carriages and the grade of the spirit beast, the prices of the spiritual beast carriages were quite different. However, there was one fixed point. Void-shedding rank spiritual beast carriages could only be traded with 9 transformation silver pills. The prices range from 1 silver pill to 20 silver pills. If other people came to the Thunder Sound Pavilion to buy a spiritual beast carriage, they could use other items to barter. However, Eastern Sky cultivators who came here had to exchange pills. Naturally, this was the method that the Thunder Sound Pavilion used to obtain the Eastern Heaven pills. Since ancient times, Ningfan was not the only external cultivator who had purchased a spiritual beast carriage from the Thunder Sound Pavilion. Countless Eastern Heaven pills had already fallen into the hands of the Thunder Sound Pavilion. Since the Thunder Sound Pavilion had restricted the types of pills, it meant that they were not after the pills themselves but the pill recipes behind the pills. Ningfan looked at the second scroll. It was marked with the pills that the Thunder Sound Pavilion refused to trade. According to Ningfan's guess, these pills that refused to trade were most likely already obtained by the Thunder Sound Pavilion. After studying them thoroughly, they obtained the pill recipes, so they did not need them anymore. After eliminating the types of pills on the scroll, Ningfan's storage pouch still had a lot of pills that met the trading rules of the Thunder Sound Pavilion and could be exchanged for the spiritual beast carriages. However, there was one thing that Ningfan was quite concerned about on the second scroll. There were 13 types of 9 transformation silver pills that were newly added. The ink was still very fresh. not more than 3 months old. Apart from these 4 types of pills, the other pills' handwriting was very old. In other words, within these 3 months, there were external cultivators who used 9 transformation silver pills to exchange for the 13 spiritual beast carriages of the Thunder Sound Pavilion? Apart from him, were there other Eastern Sky cultivators who entered this place? Or perhaps, the person who exchanged the spiritual beast carriages was not an external cultivator, and just happened to have Eastern Sky pills, and traded them to the Thunder Sound Pavilion. However, it was not impossible for it to be an external cultivator. First of all, Ouyang Nuan and Zhang Yu's group must have come to the middle state. However, even if Old Wu was included, they would not need 13 spiritual beast carriages. On that day, Ning Fan was not the only one who entered the extreme Dan sacred region. Most of the people who entered were searching for medicinal herbs in the outer region. However, there might be others who took the risk to enter the inner region. Your Excellency, you have been staring at the pill scrolls. Could it be that you are short of money and can't take out any pills that are not rejected to trade? The shopkeeper frowned. Of course I can take out some pills. However, I don't know if your pavilion has any thought fragmentation rank spiritual beast carriages for sale. If you do, I am willing to exchange them with 9 transformations golden pills of equivalent value. Ning Fan smiled. 9 transformations golden pills. You want to use 9 transformations golden pills to exchange for thought fragmentation rank spiritual beast carriages. The shopkeeper was slightly shocked and extremely tempted. When a pill reached the 9 transformations golden pill rank, even the ancient experts would not be able to look down on it. His thought fragmentation rank was naturally moved. Unfortunately, after a while, the shopkeeper could only smile bitterly. Our pavilion has a rule that spiritual beast carriages of thought fragmentation rank and above cannot be sold to external cultivators. This old man does not dare to violate this rule. If it wasn't because of this rule, those external cultivators who spent a lot of money in the past wouldn't only be able to buy space-shedding spiritual beast carriages. Ning Fan's eyes slightly narrowed when he heard the shopkeeper's words. Indeed, there were many external cultivators who came to buy spiritual beast carriages to enter the middle state. Forget it. If that's the case, I won't make things difficult for you. I just want to buy a space-shedding spiritual beast carriage. In the end, Ning Fan spent 29 transformation silver pills to buy the best space-shedding spiritual beast carriage, and left this small town at the border. After Ning Fan and his group left, the shopkeeper did not say anything and sent a report back to his clan. The report only contained a short paragraph. The 14th batch of external cultivators entered the middle state. There was only one person. His cultivation base was limited by the ancient times, and his body could not sense lightning. This person didn't come for the immemorial lightning cauldron, but we still have to be careful. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Ning Fan, who had already boarded the spiritual beast carriage to the north, suddenly opened his eyes and withdrew the rain scents that he left in the Thunder Sound Pavilion. The report that the shopkeeper sent back to his clan was still seen by Ning Fan. I am the 14th batch of external cultivators who entered the middle state. Who are the first 13 batches? Nuan Air and the others must have entered the middle state together. They are considered as the same batch. Other than that, who are the other external cultivators? Flying Thunder Immortal King, Battle Rhino Immortal King, Mahasek's disciple Qin Xiansha. The people of the Dark Race and the thought-shattering old monsters who were famous in the Eastern Heaven. I heard that the Supreme Pill Sacred Region will be opened for the last time this time. There must be quite a number of famous old monsters who entered the place. It's not strange that some of them came straight for the middle state. However, the shopkeeper of the Thunder Sound Pavilion deliberately mentioned that there was no lightning in his body. What does that mean? Ning Fan's eyes turned slightly solemn. Somehow he recalled the day when Great Emperor Chongha used a mysterious Yin lightning to scheme against him. If he had taken the Yin lightning away, because of his greed that day, perhaps the cultivators of the Thunder Sound Pavilion would have found out about the lightning in his body today. I can't rule out this possibility. If I'm not mistaken, the cunning and far-sighted Great Emperor Chongha has actually planned this until today. Also, what is the immemorial lightning cauldron that was mentioned in the report? It seems like the Thunder Sound Pavilion is guarding against the external cultivators who have designs on the immemorial lightning cauldron. Have you heard of the immemorial lightning cauldron? Ning Fan sat outside the spirit beast carriage and asked Duo Lan, who was in the carriage, through the curtains while driving the carriage. The immemorial lightning cauldron is one of the treasured cauldrons that the sacred ancestor used when he was still alive. He had a total of 9 cauldrons in his life. The immemorial lightning cauldron is the first among all the cauldrons. It was refined by the sacred ancestor using the lightning of the Eastern Mountain. He also took all the spiritual materials from the sea area of the Forsex and fused them into the cauldron. Duo Lan explained. What is the Eastern Mountain lightning? Which Forsex are the sea area of the Forsex? Ning Fan asked in surprise. He did not understand a single word that she said. I also don't know. These words are all recorded in the scriptures. However, I heard from my father that the materials used by the sacred ancestor to refine the cauldron were all taken from his hometown. My father said that it's a world that is completely different from the world we live in. The lightning of the Eastern Mountain and the sea area of the Forsex are all things from that world. Duo Lan said with a yearning expression. She did not understand the concepts of the true world and the illusory dream world, but Ning Fan already had some understanding of them. Judging from this immemorial lightning cauldron was a magic treasure that the sacred ancestor refined using the materials of the true world. The medicinal cauldron used by the sacred ancestor. According to Duo Lan's words, the herb gatherer saint had a total of 9 cauldrons in his life. The immemorial lightning cauldron was ranked first. Other than that, there were 8 other cauldrons. The sect master of the Pill sect had once obtained the Great Wilderness Cauldron in the Supreme Pill Sacred Region. That Great Wilderness Cauldron was so powerful. I wonder if it was one of the 9 cauldrons of the sacred ancestor. No matter whether it was or not, it was indeed a pity that the Great Wilderness Cauldron was destroyed. Speaking of which, this Supreme Pill Sacred Region was really full of treasures. After the sacred ancestor died, his will turned into a sacred mountain to preserve his belongings. His flames turned into the Fire Spirit clan to guard the seal of 2 realms. The medicinal cauldron he left behind was also a rare treasure. The corpse of the medicine slave he left behind was the target of Zhang Yu's possession this time. Speaking of which, I still don't know the name of the herb gatherer saint. After I came to Great Bay, I have read through many ancient books. However, I only saw titles such as Extreme Pill Old Man and Medicine Ancestor. They seem to be fabricated and unreliable. Do you know the name of your sacred ancestor? Ning Fan asked casually. He did not expect Duo Lan to know the name. However, Duo Lan's delicate body shuddered as if she really knew the name. It was as if she recalled the scene when her father brought her into the Stone Path secret realm with a stern face and told her the coordinates of the 7 stone seats. She could still hear the strange illusory voice of the 10,000 corpses chanting scriptures in front of the stone seats. Medicine Saint of the South. Medicine Saint of the South? Yes. It's the Medicine Saint of the South. Nanzhan Gu chanted the Tao spirit to perish, 1 decade into desolation, 10,000 chants into antiquity. A sword came from the west, samsara split, forever lost and converted to the Medicine Saint of the South. Duo Lan muttered to herself. Suddenly, tears welled up in her eyes. She thought of her father. Even that father of hers rarely gave her any warmth and care. Moreover, they rarely met each other. At that time, she could not understand the guilt and helplessness in her father's eyes. Now she understood. What are you chanting? What is it? Ning Fan was inwardly shocked. Just as Duo Lan opened her mouth, he felt a slight pain in his sea of consciousness. Then layers of illusions appeared in his eyes. Even though the illusions were dispelled with just a thought, they still gave him a hint of fear. He was very sure. Duo Lan, who was in the carriage, did not use any illusory technique on him. She did not even deliberately circulate her magic power. She just chanted a paragraph of words. However, this paragraph of words actually gave him a hint of confusion, giving him a feeling that he could not extricate himself from it. He could not resist it. These few sentences were definitely not simple. How could ordinary words bewitch a Fuli cultivator like this? I also don't know what these words are. I only know that all the corpses in the Stone Dao secret realm chanted the same words. They chanted numbly and emotionlessly. It's very scary. Very scary. My father said that this is a forbidden place that we can't touch. Duolon suddenly felt drowsy. She directly leaned against the carriage and fell asleep. It was as if just uttering that sentence had exhausted all of her mental strength, making her feel extremely exhausted. 10,000 recitations, 1 decade into desolation. Ning Fan's expression became slightly solemn. Duolon slept for an entire day before she woke up. In just a day's time, Ning Fan had already driven a spiritual beast carriage. They traveled towards the north for an immeasurable distance. Duolon rubbed her sleepy eyes, feeling a little apologetic. She actually fell asleep just like that. She should be helping Ning Fan to watch the road. After all, he was not familiar with the Middle State, and there were many rules that he did not know much about. One should know that the cultivators of the Middle State built their cities and resided there. Therefore, their possessiveness towards their territories was not ordinary. Putting aside those small cities, the middle-sized cities had their own territories. They did not allow cultivators to get close to them casually. If Ning Fan continues to travel to the north and bumps into the territories of some city lords, it would be troublesome. She should be helping Senior to watch the road. How could she fall asleep? Besides, Senior is the one driving the carriage. No matter what, I, a soul-locking slave, should be the one driving the carriage. Speaking of which, why is it so noisy outside? It's as if there are many carriages and horses chasing after their carriage. You're awake? Ning Fan's tone did not seem to be in a good mood. Could it be that he is blaming me for falling asleep? Duolon immediately became a little worried. She wanted to explain the reason why she fell asleep. It was because she had misread those words. However, she suddenly heard faint curses coming from behind, interrupting her words. How dare you? You've trespassed on the territory of our 1,000-army city. Quickly stop the carriage and accept our punishment. Stop the carriage. Our Golden Thunder City has been chasing after you for a day and a night. If you continue to run, don't blame us for being merciless. Shoot him with arrows. Quick. Stop him with the formation flags. Damn it. We can't stop him. This man is so strong. A rain of arrows flew towards the carriage. However, all of them were burned to ashes by Ning Fan's devil flames. Formation flags flew into the sky and sprinkled down formation light, trying to slightly stop the carriage from moving forward. However, they were extinguished by Ning Fan's finger. We can't stop him. We can't stop him. There were at least 12 cultivators from the middle city chasing after the carriage. However, none of them could stop the carriage from moving forward. Ning Fan was in a very bad mood. He was driving the carriage perfectly fine, but he was scolded and chased for no reason. Moreover, the number of people chasing after him was like a rolling snowball. It was really annoying. If it wasn't for the fact that this place was the Middle State, which was the territory of the despicable people, he would have taught the people behind him a lesson, even if he didn't kill them. Senior, what's going on with these people? Duolon was somewhat speechless. She lifted the curtain and walked out of the carriage. It seemed like Ning Fan's bad mood was not because of her. I don't know. It seems like they are here to pick a fight. Ning Fan said impatiently. Senior, you misunderstood. It's not them who are looking for trouble. It's you who trespassed into their territory and violated a taboo. Duolon wanted to explain, but she had no way to explain, so she could only smile bitterly. You are familiar with the Middle State. You should know which remote place is sparsely populated. Show me the way. Duolon's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Senior is impatient and wants to find a desolate place to kill these small fries? She seems to know the truth. Senior, actually, it's our fault first. It's not good to kill people. Duolon said cautiously. We are in the wrong first. What did we do wrong? Ning Fan was surprised. We trespassed into their territory. I have been walking on the official road between the cities and did not step into anyone's territory. Ning Fan said with a frown. Even the official road belongs to the Middle City's territory. If you want to cross the border, you have to pay a certain amount of gold and silver. Oh, so that's why. I don't have any gold and silver. Ning Fan shook his head disapprovingly. It seemed like there were people who wanted to stop him and ask for gold and silver along the way, but they were all ignored by him. I do. Duo Lan smiled bitterly. Then should we pay now? It's too late to pay now. Duo Lan continued to smile bitterly. Then let's find a remote place. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with cold light, causing Duo Lan to hurriedly wave her hand in fright. Don't. Senior, please don't kill people. It's not good to kill people. Duo Lan clenched her teeth. These people were her compatriots. If they were killed by Ning Fan just because they wanted to collect toll fees, it would be too unjust. Although the behavior of these middle city cultivators was indeed a little overbearing and deserved a lesson, I will deal with this matter. Duo Lan calmed herself down and asked Ning Fan to stop the carriage. Then, she returned to her usual cold attitude. As soon as the carriage stopped, the carriages behind them caught up and surrounded the carriage. A few middle city cultivators who were the loudest were preparing to teach Ning Fan a lesson. However, when they suddenly met Ning Fan's cold eyes, they were so frightened that they could not speak a word. What kind of murderous gaze was that? They seemed to have kicked an iron plate. Unfortunately, they did not notice that Ning Fan who was driving the carriage was so terrifying. Otherwise, they would only be fools to chase after them all the way here. Do you have something to say to me? Ning Fan said indifferently. The few middle city cultivators immediately retreated. They were panicking. It was hard to get off the tiger. Fortunately, Duo Lan appeared at this moment. I am Holy Maiden Chu Lai. Why are you chasing after my carriage? Could it be that you want to attack me? Hiss. The middle city cultivators' faces turned pale with fright. The carriage driver in front of them was already very scary. They did not expect that the other woman in the carriage was even scarier. Holy Maiden Chu Lai. This woman was actually the Holy Maiden of Chu Lai's lineage. She was an existence that even the 5 emperors of the Middle State would not dare to offend. They had really kicked an iron plate. Each of the pursuers was sweating profusely. A few of the older cultivators even recognized Duo Lan's appearance. After confirming Duo Lan's identity, they immediately begged for mercy. We dare not. How would we dare to attack the Holy Maiden? Please forgive us, Holy Maiden. What are you waiting for? Duo Lan shouted. The group of pursuers who were scared out of their wits immediately scattered like birds and beasts. The trouble was solved so easily. Duo Lan heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Ning Fan did not give them the chance to kill them. Ning Fan looked at Duo Lan with a puzzled expression. I didn't expect you to be such a kind person. Of course not. It's Senior's kindness that allowed them to live. Duo Lan put on a fake smile. Inwardly, she thought that her lying skills were getting better and better. She could even flatter Ning Fan against her will. Suddenly, she realized that she had unknowingly let go of her reservations after spending so much time with Ning Fan. That was why she could flatter Ning Fan so shamelessly. If she has her guard up, she should be careful with her words and actions. She would not even dare to flatter Ning Fan. Unknowingly, she was no longer as afraid of him as she was in the beginning. Ning Fan did not pry into the changes in Duo Lan's mind. He was happy to have less trouble. If it wasn't necessary, he would also be too lazy to kill them. He sighed with emotion. I didn't expect your identity as the Holy Maiden to be so useful. If it's me who is an external cultivator or a cultivator from the southern border like Xin Yu Chun, I'm sure those people won't retreat so easily even if they are afraid of you. Of course. In front of Senior, my identity is naturally nothing. However, in the Middle State, even the 5 emperors of the Middle State are not willing to offend the dignified Holy Maiden Chu Lai, let alone the cultivators of the Middle City. However, in the Holy Mountain, the identity of the Holy Maiden is nothing. Duo Lan said the first half of her sentence proudly, but the second half sounded bitter. Currently, she was already nothing in the Holy Mountain. Oh? Even the 5 emperors of the Middle State don't dare to offend you? Ning Fan was surprised. It seemed like he had underestimated this woman from the beginning to the end. Of course, they don't dare to offend me openly. However, I don't know about them secretly. After all, they are also proud and arrogant immortal emperors. If they are forced into a corner, who knows what they will do? Speaking of which, if Senior has any troubles in the Middle State, Why don't you let me settle them for you? It's my honor to be able to help Senior a little. If I don't help you, you will kill the innocent. Duolan thought to herself. If you can help me with many things, it can indeed save me a lot of trouble. Thank you very much. Ning Fan nodded. If it could reduce some troubles, Ning Fan would certainly agree. Thus, the spiritual beast carriage continued to the north. Occasionally, it would crash into the territories of other middle cities. However, Duolan would reveal her identity and scare them away. Thus, there was no conflict. Another day passed and Duolan realized that something was wrong. The direction Ning Fan was traveling in was obviously the 100 Flowers Peak of the Five Fingers Peak in the middle state. If we go any further, it will be the territory of the 100 Flowers Grand Emperor. She has yet to recover from her serious injuries. Her territory has already been sealed and no one is allowed to pass through. Duolan explained. 100 Flowers Grand Emperor? Ning Fan's expression turned slightly solemn. Just now, there was clearly an extremely strong but also extremely weak spirit sense that scanned the carriage. Could it be the owner of this place, the 100 Flowers Grand Emperor? The people I am looking for are here. With your identity, you should be able to enter this place, right? Ning Fan asked. Yes, I can. If Senior must enter this place, you can enter with me. However, this matter might be a little troublesome. Forget it. It's not a big deal anyway. Duolan was a little hesitant. However, she still bit her lips and nodded in the end. The carriage continued to advance for a while and was stopped. If they continued further, it would be the boundary of the 100 Flowers Peak. According to the order of the 100 Flowers Grand Emperor, the area within 1,000 li radius of the 100 Flowers Peak is listed as a forbidden area. Ordinary people are not allowed to enter. A group of strong men blocked the road. I am Chulai Duolan. I have something to do here. Duolan walked out of the carriage and said indifferently. Immediately, the strong men in the area sucked in a cold breath. A moment later, they burst into laughter. Good, good, good. Since Saintess Duolan is here, of course, you can enter the 100 Flowers Peak. We have been waiting for you for a long time. However, Saintess, you better think it through. It's easy to come to my 100 Flowers Peak, but it won't be so easy to leave. I have thought it through. Why are you still not giving way? Duolan shouted. The strong men immediately gave way to a path that led straight to the 100 Flowers Peak. The 100 Flowers Peak was one of the 5 Fingers Peaks in the middle state. It was also where the 100 Flowers Grand Emperor's abode was located. Could this be considered as revisiting an old place? When she was young, she had come to the 100 Flowers Peak. At that time, she followed her father to bully others. That year, she had made countless enemies. Her overbearing father. Chapter 10:16. After a simple inspection, the carriage was allowed to enter the territory of the 100 Flowers Peak. Behind the carriage, 10 strong men riding strange beasts followed closely behind, as if they were monitoring them. They did not intend to let Ning Fan and his group move freely in the territory of the 100 Flowers Peak. Within 1,000 li of the 100 Flowers Peak, cultivators could be seen patrolling every few li. The security was so strict that it made people believe that the martial law of the 100 Flowers Peak was not a joke. Ning Fan did not plan to wander around in this place. Instead, he drove the carriage along the path and went straight to the main peak of the 100 Flowers Peak. If his senses were not wrong, Ouyangwan and Zhongyu should be on the main peak. Among the 5 emperors of the middle state, the 100 Flowers Emperor was the immortal emperor who disliked getting involved in mundane affairs the most. Because of that, she was severely injured by several immortal Emperor Realm Corpse devils when she entered the 10th grade Fierce Domain to search for medicine 1,000 years ago. She had been in seclusion to recuperate until now, causing the territory of the 100 Flowers Peak to be in a state of martial law all year round. Cultivators from the outside world were not allowed to enter. Without Duolan, Ning Fan would probably have to go through a lot of trouble to enter the heavily guarded 100 Flowers Peak. Ning Fan had heard some rumors about the 100 Flowers Emperor. At this moment, when he recalled the message left by Zhongyu and the others, he could not help but have a guess. Zhongyu seems to be bringing Ouyangwan to save an old friend. With her identity as an immortal emperor, It is impossible for a friend to be mediocre. Perhaps Zhang Yu's old friend is this 100 Flowers Emperor. If that is true, the 100 Flowers Peak is no longer an enemy but a friend. However, the attitude of the cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak was a little too aggressive. Along the way, Ning Fan met many cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak. All of them looked at him with undisguised hostility. It was not that they were hostile towards Ning Fan's identity as an external cultivator. Up until now, his identity had not been exposed. The reason why they looked at him with hostility was actually because they vented their anger on him. The real enemy of the people of the 100 Flowers Peak was Duo Lan. As for Ning Fan, he was regarded as Duo Lan's coachman. Naturally, he would not be treated nicely. This coachman is really strong. My spirit sense was repelled before it could even get within 1 zhang of his. Humph. So what if he is strong? He still became a lackey of Duo Lan. I've exhausted my mental power and used a secret technique to probe the coachman's cultivation, but I can't see through him at all. This person is at least a shedding void cultivator, maybe even higher. So what? It was not worth mentioning. Speaking of which, this bitch only brought a void-shedding servant with her. Yet she dared to come to my 100 Flowers Peak. She's quite audacious. I might have to teach her a lesson. Some of the 100 Flowers sect cultivators they met along the way were all discussing this. There were even some who were eager to get into action with impatient expressions on their faces. They wanted to attack Doran, but they had many misgivings and were overcautious. In the end, they gritted their teeth and gave up. Duo Lan was very nervous. It was fine if she was being scolded and scolded by others, but Ning Fan was the devil lord among all devils. She must not get angry when she was treated as a coachman and scolded as a lackey. She did not dare to order Ning Fan around like a coachman, so she simply sat outside the carriage with Ning Fan, accompanying him to drive the carriage. On the surface, she still had to maintain a cold and aloof attitude like the owner of the carriage, but in her heart, she had to carefully observe Ning Fan's expression. Seeing Ning Fan's frown getting deeper and deeper, his heart sank. Could it be that Senior Ning couldn't hold back his anger anymore, and is really going to fight against these cultivators of the 100 Flowers sect? Apprehension, apprehension, apprehension. This was the territory of an immortal emperor. If they acted rashly, they would suffer greatly. Do you have a grudge against the 100 Flowers sect? Ning Fan suddenly asked using telepathy. I guess you can say that there are some grudges between us. My father, the previous Chu Lai emperor, had once barged into the 100 Flowers sect and bathed this place in blood. Duo Lan was surprised and answered carefully. Bathed in blood, huh? Ning Fan was slightly stunned. He could imagine the monstrous massacre behind this simple sentence. The smell of blood assaulted his nostrils. The previous Chu Lai bathed the 100 Flowers sect in blood. No wonder these cultivators of the 100 Flowers sect hated Duo Lan so much. With this layer of karma, I'm afraid it will be quite risky for you to enter the 100 Flowers sect. If I knew about this earlier, I would have left you outside, Ning Fan said with a frown. Senior, are you worried about me? I'm really flattered by your favor. Duo Lan's uneasy mood inexplicably became better. A smile appeared at the corner of her eyes. Actually, I also don't want to come to this place. However, without me, it won't be easy for Senior to enter the 100 Flowers sect during the martial law period. Senior, don't worry. My safety is not a problem. I'm the saintess of Chu Lai's bloodline. Even if these people hate me, they won't dare to take my life in public. After all, killing a saintess of the Holy Mountain is a serious crime. These people will at most make things difficult for me. Ever since her father's death, as an orphan girl, she had suffered a lot of hardships and grievances. She accepted it calmly. Her heart was already indestructible. If I can help Senior, it's not a big deal for me to suffer some difficulties. For some unknown reason, her fear towards Ning Fan was getting lesser and lesser. She even secretly hoped to help Ning Fan. Ning Fan remained silent for a long time before speaking. Even if you don't help me, I'm confident that I can enter this place. Speaking of which, I have neither gratitude nor hatred towards you. There's no need for you to do this for me. With his experience, How could he not feel that Duo Lan's feelings towards him had changed a little after being together for a few days? She was no longer afraid of him. There was even a sense of closeness between them. Although there was still a distance from liking him, there were already budding feelings. However, this kind of feeling was actually just a kind of misunderstanding. There was neither gratitude nor hatred. There were no more concise words to describe the relationship between him and Duo Lan. He killed Duo Lan's senior brother, Pai Xiong. He forced Duo Lan to become his soul-locking slave. This was the truth. Just because he had saved Doran's life twice and showed him some kindness, just because he had occasionally shown Doran some kindness, Doran had been overwhelmed by the favor and had developed a favorable impression of him. Then this favorable impression was wrong. Neither gratitude nor hatred. The brightness in Duo Lan's eyes gradually dimmed. She gently bit her lips and her pretty face became a little pale. How could she forget that Ning Fan was her enemy? Even though she did not have a good impression of her senior brother, Pai Xiong was Chu Lai's disciple after all. However, he died in the hands of Senior Ning. Senior Ning was Chu Lai's enemy. She could not have a good impression of him. Moreover, Senior Ning was an external cultivator. Moreover, he was a madman who kidnapped the saintess of the Holy Mountain. Only a person with a weak heart would have a good impression of their enemy and develop a good impression of him and rely on him. Was she a little too reliant on Ning Fan's protection? Was she still her? Was she still the declining saintess who had come this far alone? How could she have a good impression of the murderer who kidnapped her? Senior's lecture is right. This is wrong. It's wrong. Actually, even if I don't want to help Senior, I also want to pick a time to visit the 100 Flowers Peak again. The last time I came here was with my father. It has been many years since then. Senior, you don't have to feel that you owe me anything. If I get into trouble in the 100 Flowers Peak because of me, you don't have to worry either. I will naturally find ways to deal with the troubles that the 100 Flowers Peak creates. I will never cause any trouble for Senior. Duo Lan's voice became even more respectful. It was so respectful that it sounded distant. It was as if she had forcefully extinguished the trace of good impression she had towards Ning Fan. However, at this moment, her state of mind and cultivation had obviously improved. Her Dao heart became firmer. However, the originally harmonious atmosphere of the trip was finally filled with silence because of this. Ning Fan knew that Duo Lan had understood what he meant. She would no longer be close to him. From the bottom of her heart, she had already forcefully corrected their identities. The identity of the master and the soul-locking slave. The identity of an external cultivator and a lowly cultivator. The identity of an enemy and an enemy. Other than that, there was nothing else. There was no kindness and enmity. Indeed, there was no kindness and enmity. Purposely making the soul-locking slave alienate me. Ning Fan sighed inwardly. Am I doing a good deed every day? I don't want this woman to fall into the wrong path. I don't want her to lose her heart and truly become a slave just because of some small favors. That's why Ning Fan purposely kept a distance between the two of them. He had already appreciated this woman's good intention of helping him enter the 100 Flowers Peak. Thus, he returned the favor by giving her some pointers. Even though these pointers were a little harsh and ungrateful, it really made Duo Lan see her heart clearly. Her state of mind had improved. It could be considered as him repaying her kindness. They did not speak again along the way. There were many stone peaks in the territory of the 100 Flowers Peak. However, most of them were short. Only the main peak was unusually tall and sharp. Looking from afar, it looked like an immortal pointing his finger at the sky with an imposing aura. On each of the stone peaks, there were countless exotic flowers and rare herbs. It really matched the name of the 100 Flowers Peak. Many of them were unique species that Ning Fan had never seen before. With a thought from Ning Fan's spirit sense, there was a light drizzle in the territory of the 100 Flowers Peak. The drizzle in the late spring was already normal. No one noticed the peculiarity of the rain. However, they did not know that Ning Fan's spirit sense had already followed the drizzle and entered each of the stone peaks silently. It even entered the cave residences of the experts on the stone peaks. There was only one main peak in the territory of the 100 Flowers Peak. It was where the 100 Flowers Great Emperor's cave residences were located. The main peak was covered with mountain mist. The mountain mist was very strange. It gave Ningfan a feeling that it was like the heavenly Tao. The rain sense could not penetrate it at all. Once it enters the mist, it would lose control and gradually get lost. In the end, it would collapse and scatter in the mist. This was probably the technique of the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. Ningfan did not forcefully peek into the main peak. After all, once this matter is discovered, it would be an extremely rude provocation to the 100 Flowers Great Emperor who was guarding the main peak. Each of the 7 secondary peaks was guarded by immortal kings and immortal venerables. All of them were the elites among the disciples of the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. Ningfen also did not probe too much. He just took a quick glance at them, and then withdrew his spirit sense. No one noticed it. As the spiritual beast carriage approached the main peak, the fragrance of flowers in the air became stronger. When they arrived at the foot of the main peak, a few young men suddenly walked down from the mountain path and blocked Ningfan's path. Each of these young men was handsome, and their cultivation base was around the rogue immortal realm. There were strange wings growing on their backs. When they flapped their wings, they could actually fly up to a height of several hundred zhang above the ground for a short period of time. It was quite impressive. You guys can leave now. The venerable sovereign has ordered us to bring Holy Maiden Chu Lai up the mountain. The few young men with the wings said expressionlessly. Instead of saying that they were expressionless, it would be better to say that their faces were stiff and they could not show any expression at all. Ningfan's eyes narrowed slightly. He sensed the extremely well-concealed corpse qi in the bodies of these young men, and immediately understood what was going on. These are a few corpse devils. The strong men who followed Ningfan seemed to be extremely afraid of these young men. After bowing respectfully to them, they hurriedly left. Ningfan and Duo Lan got off the spiritual beast carriage and handed it to the guards at the foot of the mountain to park. The few young men then told Duo Lan and Ningfan to follow them and walk towards the mountain path. Ningfan's eyes flashed and he slowly followed them. These young men were the human cauldrons of the 100 Flowers Great Emperor when they were alive. The 100 Flowers Great Emperor has a preference for handsome and intelligent young men. She often plucked them for dual cultivation. Every year, countless young men would be toyed to death by her. Among them, the most beautiful ones would be turned into corpse devils by the 100 Flowers Great Emperor, using a secret technique. She hopes to preserve their physical bodies forever and pamper them as they used to be. The young men who were turned into corpse devils would retain some of their spiritual intelligence. Their status in the 100 Flowers Peak is extraordinary. Even the immortal venerables and immortal kings on the secondary peaks would not dare to provoke them. It's all because they are favored by the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. Senior's appearance can be considered as 1 in 100 handsome men. It's fine if you don't meet the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. But if you meet the 100 Flowers Great Emperor, we can't rule out the possibility that the 100 Flowers Great Emperor will fall for you. Since these young men are assigned by the 100 Flowers Great Emperor to lead us up the mountain, I'm afraid we have to meet the master of this place first. Senior, you have to be careful. Duo Lan was extremely respectful. She chose her words carefully and transmitted her voice to remind Ningfan. Be careful that the 100 Flowers Great Emperor will fall for you. Be careful that she will pluck you for dual cultivation. Ningfan's face was filled with black lines. He looked at Duo Lan and saw that she was extremely serious. She did not look like she was joking at all. Is there really a risk of being plucked by the 100 Flowers Great Emperor? He came here to look for Zhang Yu and Ouyang Nuan. According to Ningfan's speculation, the two of them probably came to the main peak to save the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. If that's the case, he should also be considered as a guest of the 100 Flowers Peak. However, it seems like he cannot rule out other possibilities and the risks involved in this matter. If there's really no other way, I'll go up the mountain alone to meet the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. Senior, you can stay at the foot of the mountain. To the cultivators of the 100 Flowers Great Emperor, you'll just be my servant. Even if you don't go up the mountain, they won't mind. Duo Lan transmitted her voice again. I appreciate your kindness. However, the person I'm looking for is on this main peak. I still have to go up the mountain. Ningfan answered. If that's the case, I won't say anything more. If anyone tries to make things difficult for me on the way up, Senior can just stand aside quietly. You don't have to worry about my safety. All right. Even though he knew about it, he did not say whether he would help her or not. Instead, he looked very calm. Duo Lan's heart, which she thought was indestructible, actually felt a little bitter. What was she hoping for? Was she hoping that Senior Ning would stand behind her domineeringly and protect her unwaveringly? It's impossible. This is impossible. Didn't Senior Ning give me some advice to draw a clear line between us? Wasn't it to cut off my wishful thinking? She should recognize her identity and the reality. It's impossible for her and Senior Ning to get into trouble and become enemies with the 100 Flowers Peak for the sake of a soul-locking slave like her. There was still no conversation along the way. Those young corpse devils remained silent. There was no longer any conversation between Duo Lan and Ning Fan. After walking along the mountain path for 2 hours, the few young corpse devils suddenly gave an order to Ning Fan and Duo Lan to wait for a while. They were not allowed to leave without permission. After that, all of them spread their wings and flew towards the top of the mountain. Soon they disappeared from sight. Ning Fan had no choice but to wait on the mountainside for a while. However, a hint of vigilance arose in his heart. He was keenly aware that the terrain of the mountain had changed slightly after the few youths with flesh wings left. The change was almost undetectable. Even some formation masters who studied the general trend of the world all year round would have a hard time noticing it. However, it could not escape Ning Fan's eyes and ears, who had cultivated the secret of the word force. Time passed by slowly. The mountain mist that was originally lingering on the main peak suddenly became thicker. The atmosphere began to feel a little strange. Gradually, the density of the mist exceeded the eyesight of a cultivator. Things that were more than 10 steps away began to become a little blurry. Everything in front of them was white. They could not see the mountain path clearly, and they could not tell where they came from. Ning Fan frowned slightly. If he was not mistaken, the mountain mist becoming thicker was indeed done by someone on purpose. Senior, be careful. This is the bewitching formation of the 100 Flowers Peak. Someone is controlling this formation to attack us. Duo Lan was slightly nervous. The bewitching formation was the protective formation of the main peak of the 100 Flowers Peak. Without the permission of the 100 Flowers Emperor, it would not be activated easily. Could it be that the 100 Flowers Emperor gave the order to use this formation to make her suffer? Sure enough, with the grudge between her and the 100 Flowers Peak, it was impossible for her to ascend the mountain safely. Duo Lan was not a powerless person. After all, she was a void-shedding almighty expert. Now that she knew that someone was controlling the formation to attack her, she immediately displayed her ability. The power of her medicine soul protected her entire body. It seemed like she was using some kind of medicine soul secret technique. Duo Lan's long hair was originally tied with the tendon of the flood dragon. At this moment, the tendon of the flood dragon suddenly untied itself and danced 3 feet above Duo Lan's head. It was actually a defensive magic treasure. As soon as the treasure rose into the sky, wind blew around Duo Lan's body. Her long hair that was untied was as red as flames. It danced in the wind, making her look extremely beautiful. The dragon tendon of the void flame 100ly void dragon. Huh? I didn't expect that you actually have this item, and even refined it into a protective treasure. The void dragon is good at bewitching people. Naturally, it has the ability to restrain illusory formations. It's reasonable for you to use this treasure to resist the bewitching formation. Unfortunately, your cultivation base is still not strong enough. This item is useless in your hands. An old man's disdainful voice came from the depths of the mist. Surprisingly, he had the aura force of a mid-thought fragmentation realm cultivator. It was actually a mid-thought fragmentation realm cultivator who was controlling the bewitching formation of the main peak to attack Duo Lan. I'll only know if it's useful or not after I try it. Duo Lan activated her medicine soul power. Her medicine soul miraculously resonated with the tendon of the flood dragon. Obviously, this was a special magic treasure that relied on her medicine soul to activate. The flood dragon tendon trembled. Suddenly, a large patch of white mist swept out, forcing the surrounding mist to retreat 20 zhang away. Insignificant skill. The old man in the depths of the mist sneered disdainfully. All of a sudden, he let out a loud shout. Suddenly, a giant shadow emerged from the mist. The giant shadow was extremely illusory. It was a giant snake formed by the mist. It was high up in the sky. It was none other than the condensation of the Tao elephant's power. Impressively, it was the thought fragmentation realm old man who had revealed his Tao elephant. This Tao elephant's name was Soaring Snake Riding the Mist. It had been fused with the old man's Tao sense. For thought fragmentation realm cultivators, not only could they use their Tao sense in a battle, they could also use their Tao elephant to enhance their divine abilities. The Tao elephant of Soaring Snake Riding the Mist could be ranked 64th in the Earth grade. Its effect was to greatly enhance the power of illusory techniques and illusory formations. As the Tao elephant appeared, the power of the mist formation immediately increased. The mist that had been pushed back by the white mist once again engulfed Duolan. Duolan was shocked. She tried to activate the Void Dragon Tendon again to fight against the mist. However, the old man in the dark did not give her the chance. He displayed his divine ability and took away the Flood Dragon Tendon treasure. As a result, Duolan lost her support. She was caught off guard and the mist suddenly invaded her body. She cursed inwardly. She wanted to expel the mist from her body, but it was too late. As soon as the mist entered her body, it went straight to Duolan's head along with her blood. She felt a sharp pain as it tore open Duolan's sea of consciousness and invaded her body. All of a sudden, Duolan's expression became absent-minded and confused. Illusions appeared in front of her eyes as she sank into the illusory formation. Loner, you must take good care of these 7 coordinates. When your cultivation level is high enough, you will use the secret treasures of the 7 stone statues to restore the glory of my Chu Lai. Don't forget, don't forget. Oh, that was what her father said to her before he died. In a trance, Duolan saw her father's weak smile and his eyes filled with guilt. He gently patted her head as her primordial spirit was burned to ashes bit by bit. However, she felt a trace of relief. Father, don't leave Lan. Lan doesn't want to restore the glory of Chu Lai. Lan just wants to be with Father. I don't need a saint lady who has lost her power as my Tao companion. The marriage between my spirit sect and your Chu Lai lineage is nullified from now on. Oh, it was the illusion of her being annulled in front of everyone. Spirit sect's saint son, you think you are so great? You don't know that if it wasn't for the lifeline of Chu Lai, I Chu Lai wouldn't want to marry you either. However, the humiliation on the Saint Mountain that day is unforgettable and engraved in my heart. Because from that day onwards, I was no longer a high and mighty saint lady. My pride began to be trampled on by others. More and more people wanted to trample on me. Your mother is a slut and so are you. Oh, it was the saint ladies from the other branches who mocked her. That day, the other saint ladies who were soaking in the mother-child pool ridiculed and humiliated her. She could be humiliated, but her mother couldn't. As a result, she became impulsive and made the first move. As a result, the other saint ladies took the opportunity to besiege her and severely injure her. They even destroyed her saint lady tattoo. In the end, she, the victim, was punished by the Saint Mountain. It was really unfair. Lana, I'm sorry. I can't accompany you as you grow up. Oh, it was the voice of her mother when she self-ignited her primordial spirit. It was very blurry and indistinct. At that time, she must have been very young. She was so young that she couldn't even remember her mother's voice and smile. However, her mother's voice remained in her memory and in her bones. It was unforgettable. My mother, what kind of person is she? I have never seen my mother before. I really want to see her once. I have never seen my mother before. I have never received father's love. I have no master, no senior brothers, no friends. All the love and concern are fake. Only the humiliation is real. Only those schemes are real. Only those people's greed for the coordinates of the stone seat is real. So tired, so tired. Don't I want to revive Chu Lai's lineage? I don't want to struggle anymore. I want to die together with my father and my mother whom I have never seen before. Be free together. I don't want to be anyone's soul-chaining slave anymore. I don't want to be mocked by anyone anymore. I don't want to struggle anymore. There were more and more illusions in front of her. Her sea of consciousness kept hurting and it was about to collapse. However, Duo Lan couldn't sense the collapse of her sea of consciousness. She had been bewitched by the illusions and couldn't stop them. There was numbness, pain, exhaustion, and abandonment in her heart. She let the fog collapse her sea of consciousness. She didn't want to stop it and she couldn't stop it. Be gentle. Destroy half of her sea of consciousness and leave a crack in her Tao heart. This is enough to teach this woman a lesson. If you really kill her, it will be hard to explain to the holy mountain. Another old monster's voice suddenly sounded from the depths of the fog. It was the voice of a middle-aged man. The old man snorted coldly. When he was about to reduce the power of the fog formation, his eyes suddenly trembled. Collapsing noises suddenly rang out from within the mist. The formation was showing signs of instability. Impossible. Who is breaking the bewitching formation? It's that coachman. How could he do that? This is a formation set up by a venerable sovereign. Even though we are the ones controlling it, not everyone can break it directly. This man. In the depths of the fog, exclamations could be heard from all directions. Obviously, there was more than one attacker hiding in the dark. Duo Lan was confused and in pain. She was so upset that she could barely breathe. Suddenly, a warm feeling spread to her body from her palm, causing her sea of consciousness to rumble like thunder. After a shock, her sea of consciousness regained its clarity. Only then did she realize that her sea of consciousness was injured and there were 2 lines of tears on her face. You're crying? Ning Fan frowned. It was him who woke Duo Lan up. Thank you for saving me, senior. Duo Lan wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. She didn't mention anything about her tears. She just bit her lips slightly, causing blood to flow out. She forced herself to calm down. It's just convenient. Ning Fan frowned. He casually pulled Duo Lan's hand and took a strange step forward. This step seemed slow, but it was clearly extremely fast. There was even a footprint of golden flames on the ground where his foot landed, burning fiercely. The momentum of the formation in this place was disrupted because of that step. The sound of the formation collapsing began to resound. Duo Lan had just fallen into the illusory formation. She was still in a daze. When she was pulled by Ning Fan, only then did she realize that her ears were burning. Why am I being held by senior? I'm just a soul-locking slave. Bang, bang, bang. Ning Fan took another step forward. Each of his footprints made of golden flames was left on the ground. The fog in this place continued to collapse and disperse in all directions. Even the Tao image of the soaring serpent riding the fog also disappeared along with the collapse of the formation. The change in the situation caused the entire 100 Flowers Peak to tremble. Cries of alarm rang out from all directions. The birds fled in all directions and flew into the sky. There were even countless cultivators who were cultivating in seclusion at the top of the mountain who walked out of their caves, feeling indescribably shocked. What happened? Was the heart maze formation broken? Did some immortal emperor attack the 100 Flowers Peak? The clear sky appeared above Ning Fan's head once again. What did he do? He actually broke the formation of the heart maze grand formation. What kind of footwork is this? These golden flame footprints look a little familiar. I feel like I've heard of it somewhere before. The technique of the Eastern Heaven Ancestral Emperor. It's the secret technique of the Ancestral Emperor of external cultivation. I've read about it in an ancient book before. No. He's not a coachman. He's an external cultivator. He's an external cultivator who knows the Eastern Heaven Ancestral Emperor technique. One after another, figures with powerful chi emerged from the other side of the mountain path. They were none other than the cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak who sneakily attacked Duo Lan. All of them wore astonished expressions. Duo Lan, on the other hand, realized what Senior Ning had done. He actually broke the mountain defense formation that was set up by an immortal emperor head-on with his restricted cultivation base. Senior Ning's attainments in formations have actually reached such a high level. Ning Fan suddenly loosened his grip. Duo Lan felt a chill in her palm. She did not know why, but she felt a little disappointed. You're an external cultivator. Among the cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak, An old monk with a long beard asked with a rather gloomy expression. He was the one who activated the Dao elephant just now. However, he did not expect Ning Fan to break the illusory formation that was strengthened by his Dao elephant's power so easily. Judging from Ning Fan's cultivation base, it doesn't seem to be very high. He should be suppressed by the punishment ring. That's right. I'm an external cultivator. Ning Fan said calmly. He would not feel inferior just because he was an external cultivator. The cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak were instantly filled with disdain. If Ning Fan was Duo Land's coachman, the cultivators would more or less pay attention to him even though they hated him. After all, the coachman of the Saintess was also a cultivator of the Holy Mountain. He was considered as the guardian of the Holy Mountain. Thus, he was not to be underestimated. However, if Ning Fan was just an external cultivator, the usual racial discrimination of the despicable people would be unavoidable. You're just an external cultivator. Who allowed you to enter the 100 Flowers Peak? And who allowed you to interfere in the grudge between us and Saintess Chu Lai? A middle-aged cultivator sneered. His cultivation base was at the mid-thought fragmentation realm. Ning Fan's frown deepened. He did not want to become enemies with the despicable people, especially with the immortal Emperor realm forces of the Middle Region. However, his principles could not be changed. Duo Lan was his servant. He could treat her coldly and mistreat her. However, he could not allow others to harm her. I came to the 100 Flowers Peak to look for someone. Saintess Chu Lai is leading the way for me. Of course, I can't just ignore her troubles. Ning Fan said calmly. Is that so? It seems like you've decided to stick your nose into other people's business. Very well. Let me see what other means you have other than your attainments in the Tao of Formations. How could you be so arrogant to stick your nose into my 100 Flowers Peak's business? The long-bearded old monk said coldly. He took a huge step forward and displayed his divine ability. White mist immediately spread behind him. Within the white mist, the shadow of a giant serpent slowly emerged. As soon as the giant serpent appeared, it immediately opened its bloody mouth and tried to bite Ning Fan's head. Ning Fan's eyes turned slightly cold. The long-bearded old monk in front of him actually used the Dao image to attack him. The attack of the Dao image is truly sinister. Ordinary thought-breaking realm cultivators would not use their Dao image to attack even if they used the power of the Dao image. The battle of the Dao image was extremely dangerous. To a true immortal realm cultivator, once their Dao image is damaged, they would either suffer a drop in their cultivation realm, or die from the collapse of their Dao. Moreover, the Dao image could not easily hurt others unless the opponent used the same Dao image to receive the attack. Otherwise, the Dao image did not have the ability to directly hurt others. Before the long-bearded old monk displayed his technique, he first used words to stop Ning Fan from using that strange movement technique. Then he used the Dao image divine ability. If Ning Fan was afraid and did not receive the attack with the power of the Dao image, it would be considered as him admitting that he did not have the right to interfere in this place. He could either retreat or receive the attack with the Dao image. He did not give Ning Fan a third choice. Ning Fan recognized the Dao image of the soaring serpent riding the mist. Obviously, this long-bearded old monk was the cultivator who controlled the formation earlier. Did he use such a ruthless method because he was worried that I could easily break the formation? Did he really want to force me to use the Dao image to decide the outcome of the battle? If he was lucky, his cultivation base would be destroyed. If he was unlucky, his Dao would collapse and he would die. This long-bearded old monk really has a good plan. Ning Fan smiled. The reason why he chose to retreat and seek peace after entering the Great Inferno realm was just to avoid trouble. However, it did not mean that he was afraid of trouble. If he was afraid of trouble, he would not have forcefully broken the volcano divine ability and Great Emperor Tutua's innate fire spirit. He even dared to offend Great Emperor Tutua. Why would he be afraid of a mere mid-thought fragmentation realm cultivator? Get lost! Ning Fan suddenly shouted coldly. A wave of oppressive but powerful Dao image aura force immediately spread out from his body. The invisible force directly caused the giant serpent Dao image to shriek miserably and retreat. Its eyes were filled with fear, and it actually began to tremble. which was rare for it. It was as if it could feel the suppression from a Tao image of a higher level from Ningfan's body. How is this possible? The long-bearded old monk was overwhelmed with shock. After the initial shock, his embarrassment turned into anger. What he was most proud of was his Tao image cultivation base. A Tao image of the 64th rank of the Earth grade was already considered one of the best among the thought fragmentation realm cultivators. Moreover, it was extremely rare for an Earth-grade Tao image cultivator to attain minor accomplishment. If they were fighting at the same level, he wouldn't dare say that he was in the mid-thought demolishing stage. But in terms of Tao mammoths, even late-thought demolishing cultivators might not necessarily be able to defeat him. His initial thought was to tempt Ningfan into a duel with his Tao elephant. Then he would kill Ningfan easily by relying on the strength of his Tao elephant. He didn't expect that the Taoist elephant that he was so proud of would be defeated by the external cultivator in front of him. What a shame! He had actually lost to an external cultivator in his area of expertise. Swallow again. It was unknown what kind of secret technique the old monk used, but it actually strengthened the qi of the gigantic serpent. Once again, it opened its mouth to devour Ningfan. However, the eyes of the giant serpent were obviously filled with fear towards Ningfan. During that brief exchange of blows, it could sense how terrifying Ningfan's Tao elephant was with its Tao elephant body. However, its master seemed to have not realized this. I held back the first time out of respect for 100 Flowers Peak. For the second time, I will still hold back. However, if you are still as stubborn as before, I won't hold back anymore. Ningfan did not summon his complete Tao elephant. Instead, black light flashed around his body. It was as if there was boundless darkness around him. He directly rammed the giant serpent forward, sending it flying away. At the same time, he also pulled it backwards, forcefully tearing off a piece of illusory flesh from the serpent. The old monk let out a muffled groan and coughed out a mouthful of blood. His expression was filled with disbelief. Due to the damage to his Tao elephant, he actually suffered quite a serious injury. His cultivation base had also fallen a little. However, he was extremely lucky that his cultivation base did not fall to the mid-thought-shattering realm. The long-bearded old monk had to admit that Yi Futian's Taoist image was very strong. Yi Futian had indeed shown mercy, and he had to admit it as well. Otherwise, his Taoist image would have been damaged even more, and it might even have caused his cultivation level to drop. But now, his cultivation level had not dropped. This was the fact that Yi Futian had shown mercy. However, no matter what, Ningfan had torn off a piece of his Tao elephant's flesh. He could not accept this. Ningfan was just an external cultivator, but his tone was incomparably arrogant. As a proud cultivator of the 100 Flowers Peak, he also could not tolerate this. Held back. Did he need an external cultivator to hold back? An external cultivator is just an ant. Being held back by an external cultivator is a disgrace. I must kill him to avenge my humiliation. Tao devouring technique. The old monk performed a hand seal with all 10 of his fingers, and activated all of his secret techniques. The eyes of the giant serpent Tao elephant that was initially afraid of Ningfan suddenly turned blood red. Ferocious light shone from them, as if it had lost its rationality. There was no longer a trace of fear on its face. It supported its injured body and opened its mouth to devour Ningfan for the third time. Immediately, the surrounding people gasped. Obviously, they recognized the Tao devouring technique. The Tao devouring technique was an extremely dangerous forbidden technique among the thought-shattering realm cultivators. It could repair one's own Tao elephant by devouring the opponent's Tao elephant. It could even increase the power of one's own Tao elephant. Many cultivators of the devil path love to hunt others' Tao elephants and devour them to improve their own Tao elephants rapidly. However, could a Tao elephant be devoured casually? The Tao elephant was the materialization of a cultivator's Tao. Devouring the Tao elephant of others would mean devouring their Tao. To one's own Tao, the Tao of others would be impurities. Even though this Tao devouring technique could quickly improve one's Tao elephant, it had a huge side effect which was making one's Tao impure. It would damage one's Tao foundation and affect one's future cultivation prospects. Even cultivators of the devil path would have to think twice before using the Tao devouring technique. and be mentally prepared to bear the side effects of this technique. At this moment, the old monk only wanted to devour Ning Fan's Tao elephant to repair his own Tao elephant. He no longer cared about the impurities in his Tao elephant, let alone defeating Ning Fan in terms of Tao elephant. It was undeniable that Ning Fan's Tao elephant was extremely powerful. If he could devour it, it would be enough to completely repair his Tao elephant. Moreover, there might be other benefits as well. The old monk's heart was filled with greed. He was sure that Ning Fan's Tao elephant must have a higher grade which was beyond the 64th grade of the Earth grade. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Ning Fan to defeat him with just a single blow. If he could devour the opponent's high-grade Tao elephant, it would not be a problem even if his own Tao had some impurities because of it. He could spend some effort to remove those impurities. However, the chances of devouring a high-grade Tao elephant were definitely not many. This was an opportunity. The old monk did not plan to let Ning Fan go. He was also sure that Ning Fan would not use too much force against him, because they were in the territory of the 100 Flowers Mountain. Ning Fan gently closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he revealed a cold smile. It was a smile that was filled with devilish intent. It gave people a feeling of coldness that made them shudder in fear. He had already given enough face to the 100 Flowers Mountain. If the other party continues to be stubborn, he naturally would not give in. His unyielding character had been fixed since the beginning of his cultivation. If he goes crazy, he would throw away all of his worries and considerations. Absorb. Black light shone around Ning Fan's body. As he made a grabbing motion with his 5 fingers, the black light immediately condensed into a black hand of light that was comparable to the size of a giant snake. It sucked the giant snake into the hand. He doesn't even dare to show his Tao elephant in its complete form. This person really has a lot of scruples. He doesn't dare to display his full strength. The old monk looked down on Ning Fan even more. He wanted to make the giant snake break free from the hand and devour Ning Fan's Tao elephant. However, after trying for a while, the old monk was shocked to find that his minor accomplishment Tao elephant giant snake could not break free from Ning Fan's hand. Ning Fan did not even show his complete Tao elephant. How could he easily restrain his Tao elephant? This is impossible. A creepy feeling suddenly rose in the old monk's heart. He came to a sudden realization and broke out in cold sweat. Ning Fan did not show his complete Tao elephant because of scruples. It was because there was no need for him to do so. Ning Fan's Tao elephant was already so strong that it could completely suppress his Tao elephant with just a small part of it. This person's Tao elephant was unimaginably strong. Fighting against his Tao elephant was a mistake. A huge mistake. I won't show mercy for the 3rd time. Ning Fan smiled coldly. He clenched his 5 fingers and the huge hand made of black light also exerted a great force, directly crushing the giant snake. He destroyed the old monk's Tao elephant with ease. A miserable shriek of disbelief was heard. The old monk let out a miserable cry. Suddenly, blood flowed out from his 7 apertures, and he fell to the ground dead. The bloody flames of his baleful chi dyed the vast sky red. Exclamations could be heard everywhere. The strength of the old monk's Tao elephant was well known in the entire 100 Flowers Peak. In the entire 100 Flowers Peak, other than the 100 Flowers Emperor, there were less than 5 people who had the ability to destroy his Tao elephant with a single blow. This external cultivator's Tao elephant was probably even stronger than ordinary immortal venerables. What exactly is this external cultivator's cultivation base? Moreover, this person actually dared to kill people in the 100 Flowers Peak as an external cultivator. Isn't he afraid that this matter will not end peacefully? Madman. Maniac. Audacious to the extreme. If that 100 Flowers Emperor is really Zongyu's friend, she would certainly be able to see through the old monk's vicious intentions. This person is the one who is at fault. Besides, I have shown mercy twice and given enough face to the 100 Flowers Peak. If the 100 Flowers Emperor is sensible, she will certainly not pursue this matter. If she is not sensible, why do I need to reason with these cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak? Ning Fan's expression was cold. He took away the old monk's storage pouch and pulled Duolan up the mountain. His movements were as fast as a ghost. In just a few steps, he had completely shaken off the cultivators in the area and disappeared from sight. Even though he could not ignore the restrictive power of the middle state, his speed was still much faster than ordinary cultivators with his earth-piercing golden light ability. Take him down. How dare he commit murder in my 100 Flowers Peak? We can't let this person go. The group of cultivators immediately chased after him up the mountain. However, how could they catch up with Ning Fan, who was running at full speed? On the mountain path, a man and a woman were running towards the peak at full speed. Of course, they were Ning Fan and Duolan. Duolan smiled bitterly. Senior Ning is indeed a lawless person. He actually dares to create trouble in the 100 Flowers Peak. It was rare that she did not feel any fear or disgust towards Ning Fan's act of killing people. Instead, she felt a hint of warmth. Ning Fan had gotten into a conflict with the cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak because of her. I'm sorry. Duolan has still caused trouble for Senior. In this case, I'm afraid Senior's purpose of coming to the 100 Flowers Peak will not be able to be achieved. Duolan felt extremely apologetic and happy at the same time. At the same time, she was worried about Ning Fan. She could not tell what kind of feeling she was having. Her previous decision to distance herself from Ning Fan had already been thrown to the back of her mind. In her mind, it was as if there was only the scene of her being held by Ning Fan and dashing on the mountain path. I'm being held by Senior again. It's just a matter of convenience. I won't let my people be bullied by others. This is my principle. You don't have to mind this matter, and you don't have to be grateful for it. Ning Fan's tone was still cold. However, Duolan felt extremely sweet when she heard it. She secretly giggled to herself. Ning Fan felt helpless. Is this woman stupid? Didn't I give her some advice before? Why did I still walk on this wrong path and have a good impression of my enemy? However, Duolan's worry was not without reason. In the 100 Flowers Peak, there was probably news about the 9 Raccoon sacrificial vessel. The reason why Zhang Yu came to save the 100 Flowers Emperor was because of this. In other words, the whereabouts of the 9 Raccoon sacrificial vessel was probably in the hands of the 100 Flowers Emperor. After offending the 100 Flowers Peak, it would be difficult to get the whereabouts of the sacrificial vessel from the 100 Flowers Emperor. However, this was not a big deal. If the righteous path could not get the news about the sacrificial vessel, he would use the devil path to snatch it by force. After all, he had the Golden Flame ancestral token with him. If it was not because of that, he would not have the confidence to run amok in this place. The Golden Flame ancestral token could kill a 6th Tribulation Immortal Emperor. I heard that the 100 Flowers Emperor was a 6th Tribulation Immortal Emperor. Moreover, she was severely injured and on the verge of death. Against such an immortal emperor, the Golden Flame ancestral token should be able to kill her in a single strike. Of course, if the 100 Flowers Emperor was really Zhang Yu's old friend, Ning Fan would not go overboard, even if he had to shed all pretense of cordiality with the 100 Flowers Peak. He would always leave some leeway for the 100 Flowers Emperor. He only needed to use the Golden Flame ancestral token to intimidate the cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak. There was no need for him to really kill the 100 Flowers Emperor. Let's go to the peak of the 100 Flowers Peak first, and see the 100 Flowers Emperor's attitude. Zhang Yu and Ouyang Muan are there. They are very close to me. The black luck on the peak is old Wu. As expected, they are all here. Fellow Taoist, you killed someone in my 100 Flowers Peak. Even if that long-bearded Zen master was in the wrong, you don't have to be so ruthless. Fellow Taoist, you really don't put my 100 Flowers Peak in your eyes. A cold voice suddenly came from the front. Ning Fan's heart was alerted. He stopped moving and took a few steps backward to avoid the attack, causing the cold light that suddenly appeared in front of him to miss its target. Oh, your speed isn't slow. Unfortunately, fellow Taoist's cultivation base is limited. If you fight me head-on, how confident are you to survive? An old monk with red eyebrows who was holding a flying sword slowly appeared. His eyes were filled with a hint of surprise, as if he was surprised by Ning Fan's speed. First Tribulation Immortal Venerable. Ning Fan's expression turned slightly solemn. He could kill a First Tribulation Immortal Venerable when he was at his peak. However, he was not at his peak now. Thus, he was naturally afraid of this immortal venerable expert. I am the immortal venerable of the 6th secondary peak. My Dharma name is Mingfeng. Since you can dodge my sword attack, I won't bully you with my cultivation base. After all, it was the long-bearded man who was in the wrong first. This sword attack is enough to repay his karma. However, you killed someone in my 100 Flowers peak and damaged the reputation of my sect. I can't just sit by and do nothing about it. Fellow Taoist, you seem to be very proud of your Tao image. Just nice, I will use my Tao image to exchange some pointers with you. It was also a battle between Tao images, but this immortal venerable Mingfeng's motive was not to severely injure Ning Fan. Instead, he wanted to give Ning Fan a chance to have a fair fight with him. Ning Fan had the strength of an immortal venerable. His cultivation base was limited, but his Tao image was not. Venerable Mingfeng did not use his cultivation base to bully Ning Fan. Instead, he chose to fight with a Tao image of an immortal venerable who was at the same level as him. This was already considered as giving Ning Fan a fair fight. If he dies in a fair fight, Ning Fan would probably die without any regrets. That was Venerable Mingfeng's thought. Ning Fan's expression softened. This person's intention was not as vicious as the long-bearded old monk. Thus, he did not plan to kill him. However, it was a mistake for this person to try and stop him with his Tao image. The strength of his Tao image was definitely not something that Venerable Mingfeng could imagine. As for how strong it was, Ning Fan had never really tried it before. After all, he rarely encountered a battle between Tao images. Today he might as well test the limits of his Tao image. My Tao image is called Ancient Buddha Feeding Eagle. It's a powerful Tao image at the 53rd rank of the Earth rank. It has the power of Buddha Dharma as well as the power of curse techniques. You might be able to deal with it. Mingfeng seemed to be a straightforward person. He actually told Ning Fan about the abilities of his Tao image, unwilling to take advantage of Ning Fan. His behavior also showed Mingfeng's arrogance. He was different from the long-bearded old monk. The latter was just a thought-breaking realm cultivator, and his Tao image was only at the minor completion realm. As for him, he was a grand completion realm Tao image. When a grand completion realm Tao image is achieved, one could form a Tao technique. Not every immortal venerable in the ancient times could cultivate to the grand completion realm Tao image. Mingfeng did not think that Ning Fan was a grand completion realm Tao image cultivator. Even so, he did not think that the grade of Ning Fan's Tao image could be higher than his 53rd rank of the Earth rank. After all, he still had some racial pride in his bones. He still looked down on external cultivators. As Mingfeng displayed his Tao image, a golden Buddha light suddenly shot up into the sky. Then the image of a seated Buddha gradually appeared within the Buddha light. Chapter 10:17. It was a giant Buddha sitting on a lotus throne. Below the lotus was a golden and jade-green glazed platform. The carvings of 800 arhats were carved on the platform. Other than sitting on the platform, there was nothing else in the entire Tao image. According to venerated Mingfeng, his Tao image was called the Ancient Buddha Feeding the Eagle. He must have used the story of the Buddha sect cutting off their flesh to feed the eagle. However, the Tao image still did not have the image of an eagle, nor the ancient Buddha cutting off its flesh. It really did not match its name. No, it was not that it did not match. Ning Fan thought for a while, and understood. Perhaps this venerated Mingfeng was too arrogant and careless. He did not display the complete Tao image, but only a small part of it. Was he imitating the way he held back against the long-bearded old monk? Ning Fan was a little disapproving. His Tao image was at the heaven grade. This grade almost only existed in the legends. It was far superior to Mingfeng's earth grade, which was 53 grades. Even if this venerated Mingfeng fully displays his Tao image, he might not be a match for him. Since he was so careless, he would definitely lose. I only need to use 30% of my Tao image's power to deal with you. You should know. Venerated immortal Mingfeng had a calm expression on his face. He was also very talkative. Ning Fan, on the other hand, did not intend to talk nonsense with him. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, Ning Fan directly activated his Tao elephant. Black light immediately soared into the sky from his body and swept across the surroundings. That black light was part of the light of his Tao image. It carried a suffocating pressure and monstrous devil qi. When the devil might swept across, it actually caused the space in this place to distort. This devil might of the Tao image came too suddenly, catching venerated Ming Feng off guard. He was directly forced to take a few steps back. The words that he wanted to say were cut short, and his expression changed drastically. As for his 30% Tao image, it kept twisting under the pressure of Ning Fan's devil might. Cracks gradually appeared on it, as if it could not withstand the devil might of Ning Fan's Tao image at all. A Buddha is no match for a devil. How is this possible? Venerated Ming Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. Even though he only used 30% of his Tao image's power, it was his first time seeing his Tao image being suppressed like this in his life. Moreover, the other party was the Tao image of the devil path. What was more terrifying was that Ning Fan did not even manifest his Tao image. He only released the devil might of his Tao image, and it was already enough to force him to take a few steps back. Moreover, his Tao image cracked. This simply defied common sense. Use your full strength. Otherwise, you will die in this battle of Tao elephants. Ning Fan said indifferently. He stood there amidst the black light, which was part of the light from his demonified night Tao mammoth. It made him even more devilish, and his aura was unprecedentedly sharp and terrifying. Venerated immortal Ming Feng seemed to be provoked by Ning Fan's words. His expression was filled with anger and embarrassment. You sure have a big tone. You just have a slightly stronger Tao elephant pressure. You must know that the battle of elephants is not just a competition of Tao elephant pressure. There are many other contests. Fine, since you insist on witnessing my 100% Taoist elephant power, I'll give you this chance. Form again. Ming Feng Immortal Venerable suddenly put his palms together. A picture of an eagle chasing a dove appeared in the Tao image. The benevolent expression on the ancient Buddha's face and the Buddha nature contained within it instantly increased by several times. This was his complete Tao image. It was impossible for a Buddha to be defeated by a demon. It should be because his power was not complete that the opponent's devil might could take advantage of him. At this moment, he had already exerted all of his Tao elephant power. The Buddha might of the Tao elephant around him increased by several times. Even though it was still not as strong as Ning Fan's black devil might, it was already able to withstand Ning Fan's devil might with great difficulty. He could not help but regain some of his confidence. When the devil grows stronger, the Tao grows 10 times stronger. Just watch how I subdue the devil. There was a Buddhist scripture that said that a long time before the calamity, a king of the Buddhist lands did not hesitate to cut off his own flesh to feed the eagle in exchange for the dove's life in order to save a dove that was being chased by an eagle. It was a great mercy to protect all living beings. Be it the eagle or the dove, they were all living beings that the king wanted to protect. There was no distinction between them. Venerated immortal Ming Feng's Tao elephant had already reached the grand accomplishment realm. The Tao technique that he comprehended was related to the act of cutting off his own flesh. Besides, it also contained the mysteries of curse techniques which were quite powerful. However, at this moment he was not competing with Ning Fan in terms of Tao technique, but the strength of his Tao elephant. In that case, he naturally did not plan to use any Tao technique. Instead, he gathered the Buddha light produced by his 100% completed Tao elephant, and condensed it into a Buddha light palm imprint that was as tall as a human. As soon as this palm imprint appeared, it seemed to be able to resonate with all the laws of all living beings. It actually kept absorbing the natural Tao power of the surrounding plants and rocks, forming ripples of Tao power in mid-air. As soon as the ripples spread, the main peak of the 100 Flowers Peak began to tremble. At the moment the momentum of the ripples rose to its peak, Ming Feng pushed with all his might. That palm imprint whizzed towards Ning Fan, and approached him in an instant. It even gave Ning Fan an illusion that he was not facing Ming Feng's Tao elephant alone, but the condensation of the Tao of all living beings in the territory of the 100 Flowers Peak. Its momentum was boundless and the weather changed. I have already given you a fair fight. If you die because of this, you can die in peace. After that, I will chant sutras for you to send you to the afterlife. After venerated immortal Ming Feng gave Ningfan a push, he put his palms together and chanted Ba. Then he slowly closed his eyes as if he was unwilling to see the scene of Ningfan's Tao collapsing and dying. This was already the full power of his Tao image, and he even used Buddhist divine abilities to gather the Tao of all living beings in this place and merge it within. In terms of cultivation, Ming Feng was only ranked 6th amongst the 7 auxiliary peaks of 100 Flowers Peak, but in terms of the strength of Tao images, he could be ranked in the top 3. At this moment, he had already exerted his full strength. It should be enough for him to kill Ningfan. However, in the next moment, immortal venerable Ming Feng opened his eyes in horror. Before he could see clearly what happened, a demonic palm that was several times fiercer than his Buddha palm suddenly blasted over. Surprisingly, it was Ningfan who had imitated him by condensing the power of his Tao elephant. In terms of power, this demonic palm was several times stronger than Mingfeng's Buddha palm. With just one strike, it shattered Mingfeng's Buddha palm. It was almost unstoppable. In the next moment, the demonic palm slammed into Mingfeng's giant Buddha image. It was as if it wanted to use its own demonic path to fight against Ming Feng and the power of all living beings that Ming Feng had gathered. Bang! 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 The images of an eagle, a white dove, a lotus and a giant Buddha were instantly shattered by this demonic palm. Immortal venerable Ming Feng felt as if he had suffered a heavy blow. Fresh blood spurted out from his mouth, and he kept retreating. Every time he took a step back, his chi would weaken significantly. After taking 6 steps back, he could no longer support himself. He half knelt on the mountain path, and found it difficult to even stand up straight. The surroundings were filled with broken Buddhist lights, and the deafening rumbles caused by the collision of the Taoist images were like thunder. The area within a few hundred steps of the mountain path was filled with devil chi. In this battle, Ningfan's devil might of his Tao image not only defeated Mingfeng's Tao image, but also forcefully changed the atmosphere of Buddhism in this place, turning this small pure land of Buddhism into an ancient devil cave. If there is no powerful cultivator who dispels the devil chi in this place, perhaps the area within 100 steps of the mountain path would still be filled with devil chi even after tens of thousands of years. I've lost. I'm not a match for him at all. A strong sense of defeat filled Mingfeng's heart. A complete defeat. The power of the Tao images of the two of them were not on the same level at all. If it was a head-on confrontation, even if Ningfan was at his peak, he would not have been defeated so helplessly. However, this was a duel between Tao images. It was different from a normal duel. The huge gap between the two of them in terms of Tao images meant that the result of this duel would only be a one-sided massacre. His opponent's Tao elephant was terrifyingly powerful. The other party didn't even use his full strength. Doran's red lips parted slightly. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak. If she was not mistaken, Ningfan had only used a portion of his Tao elephant's power to defeat venerated immortal Kuei Ming in a single strike. It was not surprising for him to defeat the long-bearded old monk with thought-shattering cultivation with a portion of the Tao elephant's power, but defeating an immortal venerable of the same level was a little shocking. Among the immortal venerables, the difference between Tao images was usually not too huge. This kind of one-sided defeat was extremely rare. Just how strong was Senior Ning's Tao image? How much did he surpass Ming Feng immortal venerable? In this battle, how much strength did Senior Ning use? Was it 90%? Was it 70%? Was it even less? It's 10%, Ningfan murmured in his heart, but he didn't say anything on his face. He had seen through the doubts in Doran's mind using the mind-reading technique. However, since Doran was tactful and did not ask about it, he also did not plan to explain it to her. Actually, Ningfan was also a little shocked by Mingfeng's instant defeat. He had never tested the limits of his Tao image. It was only after today's duel that he fully realized how huge the difference between his Tao images and an ordinary person's was. Once his Tao image was completed, it was enough to defeat all of venerated immortal Kuei Ming's Tao images. Besides, he actually had 2 Tao images. One was the demonized Dark Knight while the other was the Tao image of the Big Dipper. In this duel, he actually only used the demonized Dark Knight. Under normal circumstances, even if there was a difference between the Tao images of the immortal venerables of the past 10,000 years, it would not be too huge. In other words, among the first grade immortal venerables, there were probably only a handful of them who could defeat 10% of his Tao image. If he uses his full strength, perhaps even an immortal king would be defeated in a duel with his Tao image. However, it was unknown whether his Tao image would still be able to gain the upper hand against an immortal emperor. Why didn't you kill me? Ming Feng gritted his teeth and asked. His eyes that were staring at Ning Fan were filled with struggle. He was obviously defeated, but his Tao did not collapse and die. It was the other party who showed him mercy. Although his Tao image seemed to have completely collapsed, there was actually still a chance for him to survive. Otherwise, he would certainly die in this duel. He was a dignified and humble immortal venerables, but he was actually shown mercy by an external cultivator. You didn't use your cultivation base to bully me, so I will spare your life. That's all. However, if you try to stop me again, I won't show mercy for the second time. Ning Fan indifferently glanced at Ming Feng, who was on the verge of death. Then he withdrew his gaze and held Duo Lan's hand again. Both of them dashed on the mountain path, heading straight to the peak of the mountain. Duo Lan's ears naturally turned hot again. As for Ming Feng, he looked at Ning Fan's back that was rushing straight to the peak of the mountain with a bitter expression. Even if he wanted to chase after Ning Fan, he did not have the strength to stand up. His injuries were too severe. Besides, he still owed Ning Fan a favor of sparing his life. Besides, the 100 Flowers Emperor's intention was also very worth pondering. It's impossible that His Excellency doesn't know what happened here. With His Excellency's cold-blooded and bloodthirsty personality, if anyone dares to commit murder in my 100 Flowers territory, he would always punish them without asking for a reason. Even if His Excellency is severely injured now, it shouldn't be difficult for him to kill an immortal venerables with limited cultivation base. However, he still hasn't done anything. Could it be that His Excellency doesn't blame this person for committing murder? Is it because this external cultivator is related to His Excellency? After all, a few days ago, there seemed to be a few external cultivators who came to the 100 Flowers Peak and received His Excellency's courtesy. Could it be that this person is actually on the same side as those people? Or perhaps His Excellency just took a fancy to this person's handsome appearance and had the thought of forgiving him? Or could it be that there are other unknown reasons? Ming Feng sat cross-legged on the mountain path. While consuming pills to heal his injuries, his mind was racing. In fact, he already had these thoughts when he stopped Ning Fan in the beginning. That was why he was hesitant and decided to give Ning Fan a fair fight. It was possible that he was also trying to test Ning Fan. Now, it seemed like he made the right bet. When his Tao image collapsed and his life was on the line, His Excellency did not even take action. If it wasn't for Ning Fan showing mercy, he would have already died. His Excellency is indeed a cold-blooded person. Could it be that the lives of the eternal disciples are actually not as important as the external cultivators in front of her? Otherwise, why didn't she take action? His Excellency has changed. She has already changed beyond recognition. In a daze, Ming Feng seemed to see the graceful figure in the seven-colored light walking towards him step by step. He could not see her face clearly, but her voice was exceptionally soft and pleasant like honey. I am the immortal emperor of the 100 Flowers Peak. Are you willing to follow me? I have the wish to deliver all living beings from suffering. Are you willing to follow me? I wish to save all the suffering in this world. Are you willing to follow me? As long as I am alive, I will never let anyone die in front of me. Are you willing to follow me? Hence, he joined the 100 Flowers Peak together with countless poor children. He could not remember how many years had passed since he started cultivating until now. I will never let anyone die in front of me. I will never let anyone die in front of me. Hee. Unknowingly, Ming Feng's cloudy eyes were filled with tears. He naturally did not care about all of this. At this moment, he was already not far away from the peak of the mountain. Ning Fan increased his speed to the maximum. Along the way, he encountered tens of patrolling cultivators who tried to stop him from advancing. However, he forced his way through all of them by relying on his speed. Only when he reached the peak of the mountain did he let go of Duolan. As soon as Ning Fan arrived at the peak of the mountain, the cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak who were chasing after him became hesitant. They no longer dared to chase after him, as if the peak of the mountain was some kind of supreme forbidden area. The peak of the main mountain is where the 100-Flower Sovereign's abode is located. Without being summoned, ordinary cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak wouldn't dare to enter this place. Duolan explained. Looking at the scenery that was still the same as before, she felt a little absent-minded. She recalled the time when her father brought her all the way to the main mountain of the 100 Flowers Peak. Ningfan's eyes scanned the surroundings. This place was already the end of the mountain path. The surroundings were surrounded by clouds and mist. On the mountain wall in the depths of the clouds and mist, he could vaguely see the illusory mountain gate of the abode. On both sides of the mountain gate, there were clusters of pale orchids. The color of the orchids was very unique, just like the skin of a sickly beauty. The mountain gate faced the cliff. At the top of the cliff, there was a stone tablet that was about 3 zhang tall and 8 qi wide. There were 2 lines of 16 large words engraved on it. When a peanut dies, all living beings will suffer. When a peanut dies, all living beings will be saved. There was a hint of the meaning of saving all living beings from suffering. Judging from the supreme aura force contained in these words, it was most likely carved by the 100 Flowers Sovereign. It seemed like this 100 Flowers Sovereign was also a Buddha cultivator. In this lowly clan which had a strong Buddhist Dharma atmosphere, it was not strange at all. On the mountain gate, there was an extremely weak fluctuation of restrictions. If one wasn't a Formation Dao Grandmaster, it would be very difficult to see through it. Of course, it could not hide from Ningfan. Ningfan's eyes swept across the place. Be it the mountain gate, the plants, the orchids or the grass or the rocks, there were restrictions everywhere. Not only were there a large number of restrictions, but they were also arranged in a complicated and intricate manner. Killing intent was hidden everywhere. If the owner did not allow it, even an ancient immortal venerate would not dare to trespass recklessly. Otherwise he would face the risk of dying. After all, this place was the mountain gate of a dignified immortal emperor. It was reasonable for trespassers to die. However, when it was placed together with the inscription of saving all living beings from suffering, he could not help but feel a little ridiculous. What happened to saving all living beings from suffering? Do those who trespass the mountain gate deserve to die? Is there no need to save all living beings from suffering? The inscription of this inscription is only what it looks like, but not what it actually is. Ningfan sighed with emotion. To think that the 100 Flowers Sovereign was a figure from the same era as Zhongyu. Even until today, her cultivation base was still at the 6th tribulation realm. Perhaps the reason why the 100 Flowers Sovereign was unable to attain a higher cultivation base was because of her hypocrisy. She wasn't as merciful as what the inscription said. However, the formation of this mountain gate did have some tricks up its sleeves. It should not be underestimated. Even if Ningfan had comprehended the secret of the word force, he could not completely see through the operation of the formation in a short period of time. If he wants to completely see through it, it would take him at least a few days to do so. From this, it could be seen that the complexity of the restrictions around the mountain gate was even greater than the formation that Great Emperor Chongha had set up on the Swaggering Mountain. After all, it did not take Ningfan much time to break the formation of the Swaggering Mountain that day. This 100 Flowers Sovereign might be a hypocritical Buddhist cultivator. However, her attainments in the Tao of formations were definitely not to be underestimated. We certainly can't hide the fact that we trespassed the mountain from the 100 Flowers Sovereign. Since she didn't show up directly to kill us, I suppose she won't do it. Perhaps she's more or less worried about my identity as the Saintess. This formation of the mountain gate is extremely dangerous. Even my father had to put in a lot of effort to break it in the past. With Senior's limited cultivation base, I'm afraid that you might lose your life if you trespass the formation. If the 100 Flowers Sovereign doesn't summon us, I'm afraid we can only wait here for the mountain gate to open on its own. When she thought about meeting the 100 Flowers Sovereign soon, Duolan felt a little nervous. Her father had severely injured the 100 Flowers Sovereign in the past. There was a grudge between them. However, just as her voice fell, the mountain gate suddenly opened on its own. It surprised her a lot. In her opinion, She and Ning Fan had trespassed the mountain and killed many people. Moreover, she had a grudge against the 100 Flowers sovereign. Even if the 100 Flowers sovereign didn't punish her, she would at least make things difficult for her. If they were lucky, they would only be locked outside the mountain gate for a few days before being summoned again. If they were unlucky, they might even be attacked by the formation outside the mountain gate again. Unexpectedly, the two of them did not encounter much trouble when they arrived at the mountain gate, and the mountain gate opened. A few young men with flesh wings walked out from the entrance of the cave. When they saw Ning Fan and Duo Lan standing outside the mountain gate, they were not surprised at all. Instead, they said coldly, "The venerated sovereign has been waiting for a long time. This way, please." They were the few young men who had brought Ning Fan up the mountain, and then disappeared on the mountain path. One of them took out a token and struck it with a hand seal. All of a sudden, the killing formation in this place stopped operating. Then they turned around and went back into the cave. Even though their tone was cold, Ning Fan could still hear some politeness in them. Compared to the attitude at the foot of the mountain, their attitude was actually a little better. However, it was still not much better. At least, Ning Fan did not see any obvious hostility from the faces of these young men with flesh wings. These young men with flesh wings must have received the 100 Flower Emperor's order to bring them into the cave. Their attitude implied the 100 Flower Emperor's attitude. Obviously, the 100 Flower Emperor already knew everything that happened on the mountain path like the back of her hand. She did not seem to blame Ning Fan for trespassing on the mountain. It seems like this 100 Flower Emperor is a sensible person. Of course, it's also possible that she did not want to pursue this matter with me because of Zhang Yu and the others. Suddenly, a mountain breeze blew past. The orchid bushes near the mountain gate actually produced a whimpering sound because of the wind. Sometimes it sounded like a baby crying and sometimes it sounded like a young lady crying. It was extremely strange. Ning Fan could not help but take another look at those orchids. Orchids that could cry had yet to turn into spirits. It was his first time seeing an orchid that could cry after so many years of cultivation. In reality, those whimpering sounds were just the listener's imagination. However, in Ning Fan's ears, he seemed to really hear a trace of sorrow that had existed since the ancient times. He actually felt that his heart was touched. Ning Fan realized that his eyes were attracted by those pale white orchids. It was not because he was bewitched by them, nor was it because of their abilities. It was just pure attraction. He could not move his eyes away. Duo Lan, who was originally a little nervous, could not help but feel a little amused. She did not expect that Senior Ning, who had monstrous devil chi, was actually a person who loved flowers. This flower is a unique species of the 100 Flowers Peak. It's called the Carefree Orchid. It's one of the 10 great Buddha flowers of Great Bay. In the middle state, it has a good reputation of when the flower blooms, its nature will be revealed. It is said that the first master of the 100 Flowers Peak obtained it during one of his travels. He comprehended it because of this flower. Thus, he was very fond of this flower and transplanted it here. That senior had even displayed this flower in a certain ancient Buddha assembly and publicly praised it. All love meets. Impermanence is hard to come by. Life is filled with fear, and one's life is endangered by the morning dew. Love gives birth to worry, and love gives birth to fear. If you are separated from your lover, you will have no worries and no fears. Since then, this flower has become famous in the middle state, and even gained the name Carefree. Duo Lan transmitted her voice to Ning Fan, and explained, "If you are separated from your lover, you will have no worries and no fears." Ning Fan muttered to himself. He felt that the senior's words contained a deep understanding of the Tao of Buddha. Thus, he could not help but repeat it a few more times. "However, I have heard another secret from my father. He said that the name that senior gave to this flower is not the Carefree Orchid but the Wangfu Orchid. This flower whimpers in the wind, because it is missing its husband." Duo Lan actually seemed to be longing for the flower. The Wangfu Orchid, huh? Ning Fan retracted his gaze and followed behind the few youths, stepping into the entrance of the cave dwelling. The layout of the 100 Flowers Emperor's cave was extremely complicated. The terrain would change every 10 breaths. It felt like an illusory formation. If he does not follow the few young men and walks on his own, Ning Fan firmly believed that he would get lost in this place. Ning Fan now had a clearer understanding of the 100 Flowers Emperor's attainments in the Tao of Formations. With just her cultivation base in the Tao of Formations, she is qualified to befriend Zhongyu, who has a peak cultivation base. The cave was obviously not big, and there were not many forks in the road. However, Ning Fan had to walk for a full 2 hours before he arrived at a spacious main hall. On both sides of the main hall, there were more than 10 maids who were wearing light muslin. Each of them had their heads lowered, and were waiting for the 100 Flowers Emperor's orders. At the center of the main hall, there was a golden chair that was 1 zhang long. A charming lady was sitting on it. The pink muslin she was wearing could not hide the curves of her body. One could still vaguely see the delicate fullness and bumps on her body. Her face was also covered with a nearly transparent muslin. Below the muslin was her overly sexy and coquettish lips. Just by breathing lightly, it could stimulate the most primitive desire of any man. Conquer. I must conquer this woman. Below the golden chair that the lady was sitting on, there were 3 to 4 young men with fleshy wings kneeling on the ground with greedy eyes. They were licking the lady's fingers, ankles and bare feet in a frenzy. The scene was so disgusting that it made Duo Lan immediately avert her gaze. Her face turned slightly red and she did not dare to look at them directly. As for the few young men who were leading the way, they also joined in the actions of the lady in robes as soon as they returned to this place. The enchanting lady who was sitting on the ground was naturally the owner of this place, the 100 Flowers Emperor. She did not use her luck to conceal her appearance. Instead, she willfully exposed her body. She did not reject the view of men. Incense was lit in the main hall. The incense could also stimulate one's desires. Even Duo Lan found it hard to resist this kind of fragrance. However, it was absolutely nothing to Ning Fan. Chulai Duo Lan. I haven't seen you for so many years. I can't believe you're still alive. The 100 Flowers Emperor raised her blurry eyes and glanced at Duo Lan. Her tone was rather sarcastic. What she was sarcastic about was naturally Duo Lan, who was struggling to survive in this world. She is just an orphan girl, and she is still alive. This holy maiden Chulai is really lucky. The 100 Flowers Emperor's face was flushed. Obviously, she was not completely oblivious to the lustful behavior of the young men beside her. However, the redness could not conceal the trace of paleness that was hidden deep within her. Her internal injuries were very serious. They were so serious that she could only display 10 to 20% of her strength. Even so, she still had the imposing aura of an emperor. She shifted her gaze away from Duo Lan and looked straight at Ning Fan while licking her red lips. He's not a bad man. Ning Fan's appearance suited her taste very well. She liked this kind of soft, delicate, fair and clean man. She liked it when they would submit to her feet and serve her like a dog. Unfortunately, this person was the companion of a mortal concubine Zhongyu. She could not touch him. Otherwise, she would not mind having sex with Ning Fan. After that, she would make Ning Fan's physical body into one of her collection of corpse devils forever. Ning Fan instinctively felt a little disgusted. With his standpoint as a dual cultivator, he certainly did not have the right to look down on the 100 Flowers Emperor's unrestrained behavior. However, he also disliked being stared at by the 100 Flowers Emperor, as if she was looking at her prey. He did not expect that Duo Lan's inauspicious words would really come true. This 100 Flowers Emperor actually had lustful thoughts towards him. However, it seemed like this 100 Flowers Emperor was still restraining herself. Is it really because of Zhongyu? May I know your surname? The 100 Flowers Emperor giggled and asked. My name is Ning Fan. Oh, so it's Ning Fan. Why did you come to my 100 Flowers Peak? Are you here to look for Sister Zhongyu? The 100 Flowers Emperor's gaze moved downwards and stopped at Ning Fan's lower body. Then she made a sucking gesture. It's a blatant tease. Ning Fan felt even more disgusted, but he still said calmly. That's right. I came here to look for them. May I know where Zhongyu and the others are? They are busy helping me nourish my pills. They should still be busy at this hour. I'm afraid they will only be done after another 4 hours. If you want to see them, you can only wait. Before that, how about we talk about something else? The 100 Flowers Emperor smiled seductively. I wonder what you want to talk about, venerated sovereign? Of course, I want to talk about the murder you committed in my Hundred Flowers territory. The Hundred Flowers Emperor's beautiful eyes flashed with killing intent. That bone-chilling killing intent instantly made Duo Lan break out in cold sweat. It was so heavy that she felt like she was suffocating. Of course, it did not scare Ning Fan. She was a great sovereign who had lived since ancient times until today. She had gone through a few life-and-death situations. Her baleful qi was no small matter. She was a treacherous and merciless great sovereign. Ning Fan must be extremely careful when dealing with this person. All of a sudden, Ning Fan had many thoughts in his mind. However, at the next moment, the killing intent in the Hundred Flowers Emperor's eyes disappeared. She was still bewitching and charming. She giggled at Ning Fan and said, "Don't be afraid, Ning Fan. I won't mind killing a mere bearded man. Who wants to kill you? I can forget about this matter. But the woman beside you and I still have some old scores to settle. I will give her some punishment later. I hope you won't stop me. Otherwise, no matter how soft-hearted I am towards you, I will still have the intention to kill you. Gentler, gentler. That's right here. Tongue in. Come in with your tongue. Because it was too comfortable, the Hundred Flowers Emperor let out a soft moan and closed her eyes in enjoyment. After a while, she weakly gave an order. Yin Lang, Shi Lang, you two don't need to serve me anymore. Go and strip Chu Lai's Duo Lan's clothes for me. I can't kill her. You two humiliate her on my behalf, and use the same skill you used to serve me on her. Yes. Two young men with flesh wings immediately stood up, and answered in a lifeless tone. Duo Lan's face turned pale. She was sure that her life would not be in danger after entering the Hundred Flowers Peak. However, she did not expect that the Hundred Flowers Emperor would use such a method to profane her innocence. She asked these young corpse devils to her, "I am the holy maiden of Chu Lai. If you ruin my innocence, Chu Lai will definitely punish you." Duo Lan gnashed her teeth and said angrily, "Do you think this generation's Chu Lai Emperor will stand up for you? As long as I don't harm your life, the Holy Mountain will not pursue this matter. Don't forget what kind of massacre your father had caused in my Hundred Flowers Peak, and what kind of injuries he had left on my body." The Hundred Flowers Emperor waved the few young men with flesh wings away and stood up. With a cold expression, he took off his clothes in front of everyone. On his almost perfect, there was an extremely ugly scar that went all the way to his back and had yet to heal. This was cut by your father's sword. Do you still remember? I didn't harm your life, but it doesn't mean that I don't intend to repay this enmity. Since you sent yourself to my Hundred Flowers Peak, don't blame me for taking revenge. If the Holy Mountain asks, I will only say that you did this willingly. How will you defend yourself? There was no way to refute. Duo Lan's face turned pale. She entered the Hundred Flowers Peak willingly, and no one forced her. If something happened to her here, she could only blame herself for being careless. As long as the Hundred Flowers Emperor did not harm her life, this matter would not be considered a big deal. After all, although a holy maiden's chastity was important, as a holy maiden, she would be molested by others. Otherwise, why would she soak in the mother pool? There were many holy maidens who were in decline who were treated as goods, and were used by the supreme beings of the Holy Mountain to improve their cultivation. If her innocence was destroyed here, even if she returned to the Holy Mountain, she would be treated as a plaything and would be destroyed and plucked. She did not want to fall into that kind of fate. She would rather die. If she threatens to kill herself, the Hundred Flowers Emperor might have some scruples. After all, if she dies, the Hundred Flowers Emperor would also have to bear the consequences even if this matter becomes a big deal. Duo Lan gritted her teeth slightly and made up her mind. Just when she was about to resist, Ning Fan moved his body slightly to the side and stood in front of her. As soon as his devil might dispersed, the two young men who were approaching Duo Lan were forced to retreat with a muffled groan. They could no longer take another step forward. Put away your suicidal thoughts. I'm here. Ning Fan had never believed that he disliked this woman in front of him. The Hundred Flowers Emperor. What a Hundred Flowers Emperor. Bullying a junior with the status of an immortal emperor. and bullying an orphan girl with the power of the 100 Flowers. Even if the 100 Flowers Emperor of the previous Chu Lai Emperor had the right to massacre them, he should not use such a method to deal with Duo Lan. It was too shameful. If the 100 Flowers Emperor's method of revenge was to kill Duo Lan at all costs instead of destroying her chastity, Ning Fan would praise the 100 Flowers Emperor for his courage. Of course, he would not just sit and watch Duo Lan die. He would still take action. If he wants to take revenge, he should do it cleanly. He should not play any dirty tricks, as it would only put him in a disadvantageous position. The grudge between the 100 Flowers Emperor and Chu Lai Emperor, whether it was right or wrong, Ning Fan did not intend to get involved. He did not care who was right or wrong. Duo Lan entered the 100 Flowers territory for him. Thus he must not let her die because of him. That was his principle. I seem to have said that if you stop me from doing something, I won't be lenient anymore. The 100 Flowers Emperor's beautiful eyes flashed with killing intent. Currently, she was severely injured and could not use her magic power recklessly. However, if it's a duel between Dao images, she would not need to use her magic power. Even though there were risks in a duel between Dao images, why would the 100 Flowers Emperor be afraid of such a method when there was an absolute disparity in strength? Would she lose in a duel between Dao images who were below the immortal Emperor realm? Dao images would not weaken because of injuries. None of the other 4 emperors of the Middle Province could match her Dao image, let alone Ning Fan. Putting aside the fact that it was impossible for the grade of his Dao elephant and his cultivation base to be higher than hers, just the fact that his immortal Emperor realm Dao elephant had been enhanced by his Emperor Qi alone made it impossible for any cultivator below the immortal Emperor realm to defeat him. No immortal venerables or immortal kings dared to accept a battle between immortal emperors. That was equivalent to seeking their own death, and there was no chance of victory. If Ning Fan was an immortal emperor, the 100 Flower Emperor might still have some scruples, and would not choose to use this method. However, Ning Fan was not an immortal emperor. Of course, she would not really kill Ning Fan. She had yet to finish making use of Zhang Yu and the others. She still needed their help to heal her injuries. If she wants to regain her strength, a pill refinement master with a 5-colored medicine soul was indispensable. She must never offend him. However, a necessary lesson had to be taught. Otherwise, how could she maintain her dignity as an immortal emperor? If you can defeat me in the Battle of Daos, then the grudge between my 100 Flowers Peak and Chu Lai Duolan will be written off. Do you dare? If you don't dare, then don't stop me from taking revenge. The 100 Flowers Sovereign looked at Ning Fan with a mocking expression. She did not believe that Ning Fan would dare to accept the challenge. Unless Ning Fan was a fool. No. The Dao elephant of an immortal emperor is incomparable to an immortal venerable or immortal king. In the history of my country, no one below the immortal emperor realm could defeat an immortal emperor in the Dao elephant realm. Don't accept her challenge. Duolan was afraid. She was not afraid of the possibility of her death. After all, she had been facing schemes and death day and night for all these years. She had long become numb to her own safety. However, Ning Fan was different. Senior Ning was her enemy. He was a madman who held her hostage. He was also Chu Lai's enemy. However, she just could not watch Ning Fan throw away his life without doing anything. I can't do it. I can't do it. If Ning Fan accepts the challenge, he would certainly die. This 100 Flowers Sovereign might spare her life, because of her identity as a saintess. However, she definitely would not have any scruples against an external cultivator like Ning Fan. She was afraid that Ning Fan would die. The more she got to know Ning Fan, the more she knew that he was not a cowardly person. On the contrary, Ning Fan was definitely a madman who dared to kill anyone in a fit of anger. At this moment, she could feel Ning Fan's anger that was hidden deep under the layer of ice. Ning Fan stared straight into the 100 Flowers Sovereign's eyes without any hesitation. There was no lust or anger in his eyes. His expression was still calm, but it gave people a heavy sense of oppression. Her father was once like that. The only time in his life when he was angry was in such a manner. There was no sign of sadness or anger, but he did something crazy that shocked the holy mountain. He washed the 100 Flowers Peak with blood, slaughtered the blood river, set the holy mountain on fire, slaughtered the Triflame lightning and pointed his sword at the Radiance Buddha. No one would have thought that the former Chu Lai who had always been devoted to Buddhism would be so terrifying and crazy when he gets angry. She's mine, Ning Fan said calmly. So, are you going to fight or not? The 100 Flowers sovereign said disdainfully. If you don't regret it, there's no harm in fighting. His tone was still as calm as before, but it directly triggered the 100 Flowers sovereign's anger. Arrogant indeed. How arrogant. If I don't regret it. Hee. Let's see how a mere immortal venerated external cultivator, like you, can make me regret it. Someone informed the 7 auxiliary peaks and the 49 peaks that an external cultivator wants to fight with me. All cultivators above the true immortal realm, who are free, must come to the main peak to watch the battle. It had been a long time since she displayed her abilities. Ever since she suffered from severe injuries, the people of the 100 Flowers Peak had wavered. This was a good opportunity for her to let her disciples see that she was still the 100 Flowers sovereign who reigned supreme in the world. She would punish Ning Fan in front of everyone. Chapter 10:18. Since Ning Fan dared to accept the challenge, he naturally had something to rely on. There was a huge difference in cultivation between him and the 100 Flowers Emperor, but he also had an advantage. At the very least, the grade of his image of Tao was higher than the 100 Flowers Emperor's. Ning Fan did not know the exact grade of the 100 Flowers Emperor's Tao elephant. However, with his eyesight, which was at the second level of the Heaven Being realm, he was very sure that the grade of the 100 Flowers Emperor's Tao elephant was far inferior to his. He could keenly sense that when he faced the 100 Flowers Emperor, there was a hint of suppression from a high-ranked Tao elephant. Unfortunately, the 100 Flowers Emperor was not a celestial being cultivator, so she could not sense it. This gave Ning Fan a certain degree of confidence when facing the 100 Flowers Great Emperor. Of course, the duel between Tao elephants was not as simple as comparing their grades. Even though Ning Fan had the advantage of grade, he certainly could not compare with the 100 Flower Empress who had lived since the ancient times in terms of specific application. In short, he was still the one who was at a disadvantage in this duel. However, with his principles, even if he was at a disadvantage, it was impossible for him to leave Duolan alone. His Tao had always been unyielding. It had been so since the beginning of his cultivation. Moreover, he still had the Flame Ancestral Golden Palm token with him. If he falls into a disadvantageous position in the Battle of Tao Elephants, he was confident that he could find a way to protect himself before he suffers severe injuries. Therefore, he didn't mind fighting against an immortal emperor. This was an opportunity to prove his Taoism, even though there was a certain amount of risk involved. Of course, it was impossible for the battle to be held inside the abode. Instead, it was held on a cliff of the main peak. The cliff was 1,000 zhang wide. Ning Fan and the 100 Flowers Emperor each occupied a corner of the cliff. At the edge of the cliff, true immortals from various peaks were constantly being summoned to watch the battle. The mountain rocks were trembling slightly, as if they were afraid of Baihua Emperor's hidden anger. The mist was originally very thick, but with a glance from the 100 Blossom Emperor, it dissipated crazily as if it was afraid. Thunder suddenly roared in the clear sky. This was naturally a spectacle unique to the Dabii tribe. Emperor's Wrath of Thunder. The perfected immortals who rushed over were shocked when they saw the thunderous phenomenon in the sky. The appearance of this phenomenon means that an immortal emperor must be really angry. The person who incited his honor's anger is this unremarkable-looking outer cultivator. Who is this person? Why did you anger his honor? This person is an external cultivator. He came together with Chu Lai Duolan. So it's Chu Lai's companion, and it's actually a lowly outer cultivator. Even though this person is an outer cultivator, he did not hold himself back like other outer cultivators do in our tribe. Instead, he was extremely audacious and openly committed a crime on the main peak. First, he killed the long-bearded Zen master, then he injured the peak master of the 6th peak. He was even condescending along the way, and barged into the forbidden area at the top of the main peak. Initially, his honor didn't want to punish this person, but this person didn't know what was good for him and openly disobeyed his honor. Because of that, This battle happened. You must be tired of living. Since you dared to cause trouble in my 100 Flowers Peak, and even publicly disobeyed his honor, you can forget about leaving 100 Flowers Peak alive today. I also heard that this person is arrogant and conceited. He actually dared to accept the Dao Elephant duel proposed by his honor. He wanted to use the Celestial Prime Dao Elephant to fight against his honor's Celestial Emperor Dao Elephant. You should know that no lower-level cultivator has ever defeated an immortal emperor in the Battle of Mammoths. Although it's hard for you to recover from your injuries, it doesn't affect your Dao image. If you fight with your Dao image, this external cultivator will definitely die. However, I received a piece of news. This external cultivator seems to be the same as the external cultivator who came here a few days ago. Hiss. If he's with those people, it's hard to say if his honor will kill this person. It was normal for people to discuss among themselves. Ever since the 100 Flowers sovereign returned from the Three Flames continent with severe injuries 1,000 years ago, the entire 100 Flowers Peak had been sealed off from the outside world. It had been 1,000 years since they last saw his honor in action. Many true immortals of the 100 Flowers Peak were staring at the duel without blinking their eyes. There were also some who were not in a hurry to watch the duel. Instead, they were glaring at Duolon while gritting their teeth. Those gazes were filled with undisguised hatred. If it wasn't because the 100 Flowers sovereign had given the order to not attack this woman before the duel ended, perhaps some of the cultivators of the 100 Flowers Peak would not be able to hold back their anger and seek revenge on Duolon. Duolon stood alone outside the crowd. Behind her were countless hostile gazes. Among them, there were many memory-breaking old monsters which made her feel uneasy. It was not that Duolon was not afraid of those hostile gazes, but she did not have the time to be afraid. At this moment, she was more worried about Ning Fan's situation. It's all her fault. If it wasn't for protecting me, why would Senior Ning recklessly fight against that 100 Flowers sovereign? Duolon felt extremely guilty and blamed herself. She did not believe that Ning Fan could defeat an immortal emperor. However, the change of the situation was no longer something she could stop. All she could do was to pray silently for a miracle to happen, so that Ning Fan would not lose too badly, and not be injured too badly by the 100 Flowers sovereign at this moment. The 100 Flowers sovereign was standing at the side of the cliff. She was graceful, but she gave off a domineering aura of supremacy. It was as if the mountain belonged to her as long as she stood on it. The sky belonged to her as long as she stood in the sky. The mountains and rivers that she could see belonged to her as far as her eyes could see. When she slightly released her emperor's prestige, it had a momentum that could devour the mountains and rivers, causing the weather to change. The mountains and rivers changed their shapes. The birds lowered their heads and the beasts crawled on the ground. It caused the eyes of many true immortal realm old monsters to be filled with shock and passion. Their respect for the 100 Flowers sovereign rose once again. The emperor's prestige became stronger and stronger. It continued to rise and soared into the sky, causing the sky to crack. It expanded the strange phenomenon of the emperor's wrath lightning sovereign, revealing more cracks in the sky where lightning was leaking out. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts rumbled deafeningly. The lightning in the sky was so bright that the group of immortals could not open their eyes. The emperor's prestige turned into a violent gale and rushed towards them. Each of the true immortals instantly lost their balance. Ning Fan, on the other hand, was not affected by the wind at all. He secretly activated the Might Secret Word. Most of the emperor's prestige that was rushing towards him unknowingly dissipated. This was not the first time he fought against an immortal emperor head-on. Instead, it was his second time. Thus, he was still able to deal with it calmly. The first time was when he fought against Great Emperor Chonghe on the Flamboyant Mountain. In the end, he was subdued by Great Emperor Chonghe in a single move. Even though he managed to escape in the end, it was still considered a complete defeat to Ning Fan. It was also that battle that made Ning Fan realize the difference between him and an immortal emperor. This time, he was facing Great Emperor 100 Flowers who was severely injured. Moreover, it was not a competition of cultivation base, but a battle of Dao elephants where he had an advantage. A surge of heroic spirit surged in Ning Fan's heart, causing the flames of battle to burn in his eyes. So what if she's an immortal emperor? It's just a battle. Ever since Jieshui was sealed, the power in Ningfan's body was dominated by the power of the ancient devil. Ancient devils were the least afraid of bloody battles. Moreover, they had an innate fanaticism towards bloody battles. Due to the impact of Great Emperor Hundred Flowers' prestige, the devil prestige in Ningfan's body became disrespectful and disobedient. That devil prestige turned into a black gust of wind. As Ningfan glanced at it with his devil eyes, it whistled out. It carried the killing intent that Ningfan had accumulated since he started cultivating the Tao. In an instant, the entire place was engulfed in monstrous devil qi. That devil prestige continued to rise. It was so powerful that it was strong enough to pollute the pure land of the Buddha sect. It kept colliding with Great Emperor Hundred Flowers' prestige, but it did not seem to be at a disadvantage. Countless true immortals who were proficient in Buddhism gasped. It was rare to see such monstrous devil qi in the despicable clan. Ancient devil. Great Emperor Hundred Flowers stared at Ningfan deeply. Suddenly, her temperament changed. Her beautiful face that was filled with killing intent instantly became solemn and kind. She put her palms together and smiled faintly. Her body was surrounded by runes of Buddha light. She was as merciful as a bodhisattva who saved people from suffering. She was as beautiful as an ancient immortal. Her voice was cold and pleasant to the ears. My despicable clan uses lightning as the sky and flames as the earth. When an emperor is angry, he is welcomed with lightning. When an emperor dies, he is cremated. There are 10 Buddha flowers. The first one is the golden lightning epiphyllum. It was born in the extreme lightning sky and extinguishes the wishes of all living beings. It blooms once every 100,000 years and withers after 10 breaths. When the flower blooms, the mountains and rivers are buried. She chanted and rays of golden light shone from her body. Behind her, a gigantic golden lightning flower was formed. That gigantic flower was condensed from golden lightning. It gave off a dignified Buddha nature and an indescribable sense of mercy. Anyone who saw it would sink into the path of Buddha. As soon as the flower appeared, Sanskrit chant appeared out of nowhere. It spread across the mountains and rivers and entered the ears of everyone who heard it. The Sanskrit chant was ancient and obscure. It was difficult to discern its content. The tone of the chant was sorrowful and heavy. It gave people a heavy feeling that it had been through countless years. The cadence of the chant seemed to have the ability to bewitch people. Some of the cultivators who did not have a strong Tao heart were directly lost in the Sanskrit chant. As for those who were not lost, they became even more enthusiastic and amazed. The golden epiphyllum flower form. It was ranked 29th among the 32 forms of Buddhism. Among the earth-grade Tao images, it was ranked 17th. This Sanskrit chant was actually the Buddha voice of heaven and earth that was triggered by the golden epiphyllum flower. His Eminence rarely used this form. After all, it was rare for an immortal emperor to participate in a battle of Tao images. It was really fortunate for him to be able to witness this form with his own eyes today. As for a mere external cultivator, it was like an ant trying to shake a tree. It was ridiculous that he overestimated himself. He was just courting death. It's coming. The moment the flower took form, the 100 Flowers Empress took a small step forward. Her steps were light and graceful. However, it was also extremely dangerous. With just a small step, millions of rays of golden light shot up into the sky from where she stepped. It was the authentic golden light of the Buddha sect. The golden light reached the heavens and descended to the ground. Then, it spread crazily towards the world behind the 100 Flowers Empress, causing the mountains and rivers behind her to be engulfed in the golden light. 10 li. 100 li. 1,000 li. 10,000 li. When the 100 Flowers Empress unleashed her full power, the power of the Tao image had already spread to 10,000 li away from the boundary of the 100 Flowers Peak. The sky that could be seen within 10,000 miles behind him turned golden. The grassland in the distance turned golden. The beasts, birds, cultivators, cities, everything that was affected by the power of his Tao image turned golden. The mountains and rivers within 10,000 miles behind him seemed to be the only color that remained. It gave people an inconceivable feeling. The 100 Flowers Empress was the only ruler of this world that was engulfed in golden light. The immortals of the 100 Flowers Peak were also engulfed in the golden light. Being in this golden light, they actually lost control of their Tao. It was even extracted from their bodies by an invisible force. Then, it was assimilated and absorbed by the 100 Flowers Empress Tao. Even they themselves had become a part of the 100 Flowers Empress Tao, seizing the Tao of all living beings and turning it into my own. This was the 100 Flowers Empress technique. All the Tao in the world can be used by me. All living beings belong to me. When all living beings become one with the Tao can drown the heavens. You can't stop me. The 100 Flowers Empress voice carried an indescribable conviction. With a thought in her mind, the 10,000 li of golden light behind her rushed towards Ningfan with the Tao power of mountains and rivers. Wherever the golden light passed through, the Tao laws that intertwined between heaven and earth collapsed. It was enough to show how destructive this attack was to the Tao. This attack was an attack of the Tao image. If Ningfan refuses to receive it, he would not be injured, but it was equivalent to admitting defeat. Of course, Ningfan would not admit defeat. At the moment the golden light collided with him, he suddenly lifted one of his fingers and pointed at the air in front of him. When his finger touched the air, a black dot that looked like an ink mark was left in heaven and earth. At first, it was just a dot of ink. However, that dot of ink gradually spread and turned into a black mirror wall. It was as tall as the sky and 1 zhang thick. It blocked the golden light brazenly. It was a barrier that Ningfan condensed using the power of the Tao image. At the very least, if it was Mingfeng immortal venerated, he would definitely not be able to break it with the power of the Tao image. However, the 100 Flowers Empress 10,000 li golden light smashed the mirror wall into pieces after just one collision. Then, it got closer to the 100 Flowers Empress. With this test, Ningfan was able to confirm the difference between his Tao image and the 100 Flowers Empress Tao image. The Tao power in his body circulated crazily. More heaven-connecting mirror walls appeared and blocked the 100 Flowers Empress path. Vaguely, there were more than 100 of them. The golden light that covered an area of 10,000 li was still as ferocious as before. It forcefully broke through the mirror walls one after another. However, its momentum kept weakening. When it broke through the 46th mirror wall, the golden light's momentum was completely stopped. Ningfan pressed his 5 fingers, and the remaining mirror walls suddenly shattered. Then, they condensed into a gigantic palm made of black light and slammed heavily at the golden light, pushing it back to the back of the 100 Flowers Empress. Outside the cliff, the crowd of cultivators was shocked. Obviously, none of them expected that Ningfan would be able to withstand an attack from the 100 Flowers Empress. Being able to withstand one attack meant that he would be able to withstand 10 attacks. If he could withstand 100 attacks, he would be qualified to fight against the 100 Flowers Empress on equal grounds. A mere immortal venerated realm external cultivator could actually resist the Tao image of an immortal emperor with his identity as a lesser immortal venerated realm external cultivator. If this news were to spread, it would certainly shake the entire great desolate continent. Ningfan, however, sighed inwardly. Even though he managed to withstand an attack from the 100 Flowers Empress Tao image, the consumption of their energy was completely different. The 100 Flowers Empress was using the Tao of living beings to attack. Thus, the consumption of her energy was negligible. As for Ningfan, he was using his own strength to resist the Tao of the 10,000 li of mountains and rivers. Of course, the consumption of his energy was huge. He could withstand one attack head-on. He might also be able to withstand 10 attacks head-on. 100 attacks. What about 1,000 attacks? If this goes on, the 100 Flowers Empress would eventually exhaust all of his Tao power, and he would be defeated. You are not bad. The 100 Flowers Empress waved her hand slightly. The golden light that covered an area of 10,000 li rumbled towards Ningfan again. However, Ningfan understood the hidden meaning in the 100 Flowers Empress words. He was not bad. However, he was still not good enough to fight against an immortal emperor. Ningfan still managed to withstand the second attack. The third attack, the fourth attack. On the 21st attack, Ningfan finally showed signs of fatigue. The circulation of the Tao power in his body became sluggish. The 30th attack, the 40th attack, the 79th attack. The 100 Flowers Empress was still calm while Ning Fan was showing signs of his Tao power being depleted. This man has lost. However, he should be proud of himself. A low-level cultivator, who can withstand 79 attacks from an immortal emperor's Tao image. There isn't a single one in my clan who can do that. It's just a fantasy to say that a junior can subdue a senior. Without reaching that level, one wouldn't understand how terrifying an immortal emperor is. In the midst of the discussions in the surroundings, the 80th attack whizzed towards Ning Fan. It carried the Tao of mountains and rivers, and was still as unstoppable as before. The difference between our levels is too great. Let's start again. Chu Lai and Duolan's matters are none of your business. Of course, the 100 Flowers Empress held back. This last attack would severely injure Ning Fan, but it would definitely not take his life. The golden light engulfed Ning Fan, and the 10,000 li of mountains and rivers behind him. However, she did not notice that Ning Fan's eyes were still calm despite being shrouded in the golden light. No, it would not be accurate to say that his eyes were calm. It was a gaze of someone who had comprehended something. Using the Tao of one to fight against the Tao of all living beings. Moreover, my opponent is an immortal emperor. My chances of winning are naturally slim. Unless I also have a similar technique which allows me to use the power of all living beings. Only then will I have a chance of winning. I used one attack to estimate the difference between my Tao image and the 100 Flowers Empresses. Then, I used 78 attacks to comprehend the method that the 100 Flowers Empress used to gather the Tao of all living beings. Unfortunately, this Tao gathering technique isn't easy to learn in the first place. Moreover, because it's a divine ability of the Buddhist sect, it goes against the will of the ancient devil in my body. Thus, the difficulty of mastering it is doubled. Ancient Buddhism transformed all sentient beings, so they could use the Tao of all sentient beings to subdue their enemies. Ancient fiends are different. The ancient devils did not know how to teach living beings. They only knew how to fight and kill. They had no gratitude towards living beings, so it was naturally extremely difficult for them to use the Tao of all beings. When the ancient devil wanted to do things, he would cut through mountains, fill seas, kill people, and kill Buddhas. If all living things stand in my way, I will destroy all living things. If the heavens and earth obstruct me, I will destroy them. The ancient devil's Tao is actually breaking and destroying. Breaking is the will, wanting to break through all restraints and seek the true self. Destroying is power. If there is no power, all disobedience is just empty talk. Annihilation, annihilation. In the past, when I used the power of the ancient devil, I lacked the heart of annihilation and the Tao of annihilation. The demonized dark night is the Tao image of the devil Tao. Without the comprehension of the Tao of annihilation, its power is naturally just an empty shell. The golden light pierced into his body, tearing apart his Tao and destroying it. There were no wounds or blood, but he felt excruciating pain. However, under the intense pain, a smile appeared on Ning Fan's face. It was a devilish smile. Fighting against an immortal emperor realm expert was indeed the best opportunity to verify his Tao image. It was Ning Fan's first time comprehending the essence of the ancient devil bloodline. All the abilities of the ancient devils were just the surface. What truly determined the difference between the ancient devils and the other races was not their bloodline nor their abilities, but their Tao. The Tao of annihilation. Ning Fan's bloodline began to throb and burn. His Tao heart had improved and it had sublimated. The part of his Tao persistence that belonged to the ancient devil bloodline had improved. The golden Buddha light that pierced into his body was directly repelled by the boiling ancient devil power in his body. It could no longer invade his body anymore. The 100 Flower Empress frowned for the first time since the start of the duel. She had already tested Ning Fan's strength. According to her calculations, Ning Fan definitely would not be able to withstand the 80th attack. However, at this moment, Ning Fan was still not defeated and even repelled her Buddha power. Boom! A loud explosion resounded. A human figure shrouded in black Tao light blasted away the golden Buddha light beside him and appeared. It was Ning Fan who was engulfed by the Buddha light just now. this external cultivator is actually still holding on. Some true immortals who predicted that Ning Fan would lose were instantly slapped in the face and became speechless. There were also some who insisted that Ning Fan's Dao power had already been exhausted. It was the 100 Flowers Emperor's fault for being able to withstand the 80th attack. However, it was definitely impossible for him to withstand the 80th attack, unless the 100 Flowers Emperor continues to throw the match. However, Ning Fan's smile was just too horrifying. It actually made many true immortals who were proficient in Buddhism feel a chill down their spines. Fear. There was actually a Buddhist cultivator who was afraid of the smile of a devil cultivator. However, it was not strange because Ning Fan's current body was emitting a completely different devil chi. That kind of devil chi was too dangerous and could not be tolerated by heaven and earth. It was something that Buddhist cultivators had been trying to destroy since ancient times. Wanting to destroy it was a sign of fear in the first place. The word destruction is the essence of the ancient devil bloodline. The more exhausted one's Dao power is and the more desperate the situation is, the stronger the ancient devil Dao of destruction will be. Ning Fan could feel the boiling ancient devil bloodline in his body. The 100 Flowers Emperor knitted her brows and delivered the 81st attack with a flip of her hand. Faintly, she had a feeling that Ning Fan seemed to have undergone a transformation. He was different from before. That was why the power of his attack was actually 30% stronger than his previous attacks. It seems like the 100 Flowers Emperor didn't use her full strength just now. But in fact, I didn't use my full strength either. I just wanted to comprehend the Tao of all beings in the attack of the Tao image. That's why I held back. But now, I don't have to hold back anymore. Demonized Dark Night. With a single thought from Ning Fan, 10,000 li of mountains and rivers behind him sank into the dark night almost instantly. 10,000 li behind the 100 Flowers Emperor was a dazzling golden world. As for the 10,000 li behind Ning Fan, it was a world that was shrouded in darkness. The golden sky and the black sky were equally matched. It was the first time Ning Fan fully displayed the demonized Dark Night Dao image ever since he entered the 100 Flowers Peak. Moreover, it was the Dark Night that he condensed after comprehending the ancient Devil Dao of destruction. The aura of the Devil Dao that it emitted shocked the 100 Flowers Emperor. As Ning Fan pointed his finger forward, the 10,000 li of black light collided with the 10,000 li of golden light. The result of the collision made everyone's expression change. Boom. The 10,000 li of black light remained unmoved, but the 10,000 li of golden light retreated crazily, and cracks appeared on it. In the 81st strike, Ning Fan actually reversed the situation and began to gain the upper hand. The immortals all gasped. A mere celestial prime external cultivator had the upper hand in front of a celestial emperor. Was it the 100 Flower Emperor's carelessness, or this external cultivator's luck, or boom? The 100 Flower Monarch's brows were tightly knitted together. She brazenly delivered her 82nd attack. But she was once again defeated by Ning Fan and suffered a small loss. It was not a fluke. This external cultivator had truly suppressed 100 Blossom Emperor. What did he do? His Devil Dao aura seems to be different from before. And his Dao image? The 100 Flowers Emperor's heart was in turmoil. Ning Fan's Devil Dao Qi was definitely not ordinary. His Dao image was even more extraordinary. What an arrogant kid. Against a Celestial Emperor expert, he actually lasted until the 81st strike before he started to reveal his complete Dao manifestation. What kind of Dao image was this? He couldn't see through its level, but it was definitely higher than her Earth rank 17. There were too few records about Dao manifestations in the era of Dharma decline. Some powerful Dao manifestations were the absolute secrets of the world. Even in ancient times, not everyone was qualified to know about them. The current Sha Di was qualified to know about Ning Fan's Dao manifestation of night, but the 100 Flower Monarch was not qualified enough. Blossoming thunder fragrance. The 100 Flower Monarch shouted. The giant flower behind her began to spin. Instantly, millions of traces of golden lightning Dao power fused into the 10,000 li golden light. All of a sudden, the power of the 100 Flower Monarch's Dao manifestation skyrocketed by tens of times. The Battle of Tao Manifestations was not just a simple competition of cultivation levels. There were many other ways to utilize them. Without a doubt, this 100-flower monarch had completely mastered her Tao manifestation. Ning Fan could not help but admit that he was astonished. The 10,000 Li golden light that was enhanced by lightning not only had its power increased tremendously, but it was also filled with violent impact force. The Tao laws were in a frenzy. Before the 10,000 Li golden light could reach Ning Fan's body, the Tao laws that shot out in all directions had already scratched Ning Fan's face. Traces of blood flowed out. Logically speaking, Tao manifestations could not hurt people. However, the power of this Tao manifestation had obviously exceeded this limit. This was the 100-flower monarch's full strength. Only by defeating this attack could one be considered to be above the Tao manifestation and truly defeat the 100-flower monarch. The 100-flower monarch pressed her white hand on the 10,000 Li golden light and said with a cold tone, "This is the full power of my Tao manifestation. The result is not something that I can control. You better think it through. It's still not too late to retreat now. Otherwise, she might not be able to control her strength and hold back." Because she still wanted to make use of Zhongyu. Even though the 100-flower monarch was unwilling to kill Ning Fan, she also could not allow herself to lose to a lowly being. If no one wants to retreat from this battle, there must be a result. Then she must win. As an ancient devil, how can I run away? Ning Fan gave a devilish smile. He also pressed his devil palm. Within the 10,000 Li of black light, bright white stars were born. Tao manifestation of the Big Dipper. This was Ning Fan's second great heaven-grade Tao manifestation. Even though he had yet to cultivate it to grand completion, he still used it at this moment. When the two great Tao manifestations fused together, it would be a transcending heaven-grade Tao manifestation. The effect it produced also increased the power of Ning Fan's Tao manifestation by more than 10 times. After all, it was a sublimation of the realm. Facing the full power attack of an immortal emperor, Ning Fan would be a fool if he still holds back. The aura force of the 100-flower monarch's Tao manifestation shocked every cultivator who was watching the battle. Ning Fan's 10,000 Li devil aura force also made the expressions of every cultivator who was watching the battle change. This was definitely not a battle between Tao manifestations that they could participate in. Absolutely not. Even the immortal venerables and immortal kings of the 7 auxiliary peaks felt their hearts trembling at this moment. Other than Ming Feng, who was severely injured, the other 6 old monsters of the auxiliary peaks were all present. If their Tao manifestations get involved in this battle, they would certainly be directly annihilated. Who will win? Will it be the venerable one, or this external cultivator? At this moment, even the 100-flower monarch herself was not sure that she could win this battle. However, since Ning Fan did not retreat, how could she retreat as well? This battle must have a winner and a loser. Falling Buddha Mountain of one realm. The 100-flower monarch pushed her palm forward. Within the 10,000 Li of Buddha light, the shadow of 5-finger mountains appeared. The Buddha light that was 10,000 Li of 10,000 Li crashed towards Ning Fan with a force that could move mountains and overturn seas. This was the strongest attack of her Tao manifestation. This was the strongest attack. Ning Fan, on the other hand, was not as concerned about the outcome of the battle as the 100-flower monarch. He had already forgotten about the outcome of the battle. All he had was the desire to challenge experts in his ancient devil bloodline. There was only the 2 words ancient devil destruction that kept reverberating in his mind. Even if the Buddha mountain came to suppress him, it would never be able to suppress his devil Tao. I must destroy everything. I must break through everything. Only then can I be a true ancient devil. Ancient devil mountain breaking strike. Ning Fan gathered all the black light within 10,000 Li on his fist and swung it. His control of the Tao manifestation was not as good as the 100-flower monarch's. However, his devil heart and his Tao were not something that the 100-flower monarch could compare to even if she cultivated for 10 lifetimes. Bang! 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 The shadows of the 5-finger mountains were shattered by Ning Fan's punch. Then the 100-flower monarch's Tao manifestation was completely defeated. The Buddha light within 10,000 li turned into nothingness. The powerful shockwave directly sent the true immortals who were watching the battle flying. The 100-flower monarch coughed out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Like a withered flower, her chi rapidly weakened. In the end, her injuries had worsened. She was defeated. She was utterly defeated. Even if the other 5 emperors of the Middle Province were to fight against Ning Fan's Dao manifestation, they would still lose without a doubt. This young man's Dao manifestation is simply terrifyingly strong. He has yet to grow to the immortal emperor realm. If he becomes a sovereign, Pucci after coughing out another mouthful of blood, the 100-flower monarch's body turned illusory in the midst of the boundless broken Buddha light. No one could see what happened at that moment. The others were all sent flying away by the shockwave. Ning Fan was the only one who saw this unbelievable scene. At the moment when the 100-flower monarch's body turned illusory, she seemed to have lost her human form and turned into a withered flower. Could that flower be the 100-flower monarch's true form? Could it be that the 100-flower monarch is a plant that gained sentience and stepped onto the path of cultivation? No, this is just an ordinary flower. There is no trace of cultivation base at all. It is even a flower that had already withered and died a long time ago. It does not even have any life. Besides, there is also the divine ability on this flower. Could it be? Ning Fan's thoughts raced. A moment later, the withered flower turned back into the 100-flower monarch. At the same time, in a market of a certain city in the middle state, an old man who was bargaining with a customer suddenly exclaimed in surprise, "Hey, old man Nyo, are you selling this water jar or not? My old master has asked for 10 water jars. After all, he has just bought a new mansion and there are many things that he needs to buy. If you don't want to do this business, I will look for someone else. I'll sell it. 300 coins. The person who was addressed as Old Man Nyo put away his surprised expression and answered. In his heart, however, he was secretly curious. Who was the one who fought against that dead bee's illusory puppet? Who could actually exhaust its Dao power and reveal its true form? In a singing house in the Lioli city of the Middle State, 7 to 8 female dancers were performing for the customers. Suddenly, one of the dancers stepped on the wrong beat. Her face was filled with a hint of surprise. She was a dancer with an almost perfect appearance. There was not a single flaw on her face. She was elegant and her bones were made of jade. She gave people a feeling of holiness. It was as if she was not a dancer but a walking bodhisattva. The taste of the boundless butterfly. The dancer could not help but lick her lips. The saliva secretion in her mouth also increased in an instant. I didn't expect that the famous #1 leader of the Lioli city would actually make such a small mistake. However, even if she made a mistake, she is still the one I love the most in my heart. Humph! A Feng is mine. Whoever fights with me will be the enemy of my He clan. Your He clan's money and food might not even be enough for Ah Feng to give for a month. How can you be compared to my Lei clan? Ah Feng, my Ah Feng! Below the stage, there was a group of young masters fighting for the flower. The dancer named Ah Feng looked deeply at the young masters below and smiled sweetly. Then, she continued to dance without a change in expression. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.